Hello, everybody. It is October. And what does that mean? It means it's time for another PmP end of month review. What is the PmP? Why, that's the Painters Motivating Painters. It is our Google Plus hobby focused community for all things miniature painting and hobby related. And I am joined again by two luminaries of the painting world. It is Jeff Egan and Kieran Dunleavy. How you doing, gentlemen?
Well, I feel pretty good. It's my first time as a luminary, so it'll take some getting used to.
Yeah, no, nice to be here with you guys. Ready to rock and roll and check out some cool painted minis.
Absolutely. And it was another fantastic month of amazing submissions. So how does it work in the PmP? Well, it works like this. At the beginning of every month, people set up a pledge, what they plan to paint that month. I love alliteration. So then what they do is they post their progress of what they are painting throughout the month. And then when they're finished, they post up their end of month submissions. And during this monthly show, Jeff, Kieran, and myself sit down and we review all the end of month submits, offer our feedback on it, where they succeeded, where we think they could take the next step in their hobby journey. So if you'd like to join us on your hobby journey, the link is down below in the description. And painters of all skill levels are welcome. This isn't about suddenly painting for display quality or anything like that. It is simply about having a passion for miniature painting wherever you happen to be and wanting to take the next step in your own personal journey. And that's how we focus all of our critiques, feedback, and reviews. Did I sum that up appropriately, gentlemen?
You got it.
I'm now wiser than I was a couple moments ago, yes.
So I think enough of me rambling, right? I think that's the take-home point. So, gentlemen, are you ready to review some miniatures? Do you feel psychologically, mentally, spiritually prepared?
I want to slide in one more thing before we launch
Please.
into photos. And this is just a little bit of neighborhood self-promotion. And because you love alliteration so very much, the month of October, by the Age of Sigmar hobbyists in Alberta, has been dubbed a challenge between Oaktober and Orktober, where the challenge is for all those hobbyists to paint as many trees and or orcs as they can. And I understand there's a rising voice of Ogretober, but that doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
I do like Orktober. I like Orktober. I think that's fun. I mean, I've already painted all my tree people, but I guess I do still have a L'Oreal and that and a Drycha to go, so I can contribute. Mm-hmm. I'm going to contribute to Oaktober then, I guess, even though I like the sound of Orktober better.
Well, so on the Facebook groups of Alberta's Age of Sigmar players, that's the sort of stuff is raging at the moment. So join in if you got some orcs or some oaks or some ogres, I guess.
Very nice.
Starts with an O.
You'll have to throw me a link for that, and I'll throw that in the show notes as well, so people can check out how the showdown turns out. What green thing wins, the trees or the orcs? It's the month of the green battle. There you go.
That's
right. Very nice. All right. So now, are you prepared?
I'm now prepared.
All right. Then let's rock and roll. Let's look at some miniatures. Okay. So locked on myself, sharing up here. Tell me when you can see my screen. We are back to the old style of Google Plus, so we should have a nice, smooth review this month, not like last month. Huzzah! Thank you very much. Quick shout out to Victor Case, who helped me out fixing that. So thank you, Victor.
Guy's wise in all sorts of ways.
He really is.
Bless him.
So why don't we do this? Right here, we're going to start off with Lionel's Great Shaman and Yetis. So why don't I take the Shaman? Jeff, why don't you take the Lizard Mine from Christopher Davis, the Saurus, and Kieran, why don't you take Sophie's submission by way of Mickey Jenver? How's that sound?
Oh, sure will.
All right, here we go. So Lionel has a Shaman here, and we've got some blood spatter. We've got a little Noblar on the back. Let's get to the Yetis. There we go. Okay, so I think I talked about these some at the end of last month or a little bit, but what so I'll be very quick because I think I remember covering this at the very end of last month. But what I like about it is his blood spatter is extremely organic. It looks very naturally randomly scattered. The butcher knife here, we can see it dragged across. That's very good. Same. What I love about the Yetis, what I mentioned last time, is this wonderful ice effect he's done here of the weapons, of having the wood looking like it's passing through the inside of the ice shaft, which is absolutely fantastic. And a very, very easy effect. I'm not meaning to demean the work. I just mean he's executed well on it here. But people often think about this in very complicated terms of how do you paint something solid to look translucent. And the trick is, of course, you create depth, which is what he's done here by having the dark get covered over by the light dry brush. So really, really great work all around. I guess if I was going to challenge you some on the shaman, I would say that you've got a lot of great skin folds here. This guy has so much weird flesh going on. I think you should work on working some more colors and tones into this flesh, some reds, some purples, stuff like that. You could just, try some different washes mixed in there lightly. Because this guy has probably got bruises and all sorts of other stuff on him, and it could make the flesh look a lot more alive if we work in some deeper colored shadows and things like that. Maybe here in the crux of the arm. It would also help smooth out some of these other wash lines that you have that kind of built up a little heavy. So I'd say lighten up your other wash and maybe lightly with maybe a little Lamia medium or glaze medium, or just watered down a little bit of wash. Just work in a couple quick washes here in the folds, and you'll be amazed how much of a difference it makes.
I think that would work best on his scarring. Like he's got scars slashing across the back, and he has those points where he's sort of jabbed in piece of bones or meat hooks into his skin. And those are the places that they can certainly be a different wash tone in there.
It's an excellent point. Yeah, it helps look like natural bruising, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right. But good stuff. Thank you, Lionel. Okay. Christopher Davis's Saurus. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, so Chris put together a bunch of Saurus for this month's submission. And what I like most about these guys is actually something that it's one of the smaller details in the model. I like what he's done best with the mouth. I think he's done a great job of picking out the teeth, and I especially enjoy the way that his tongue is shaded and highlighted. So it goes all the way down to a reddish purple and all the way up to a pink at its highlight. So I think that's a really nice attention to detail there, and it makes the models look really nice and crisp in those finely detailed areas. I also like what you've done with the two types of metallic here. You have the gold color and the silver mixed throughout the model. The silver spear points, and then the gold as a point of color all across the miniatures. Some things to challenge you further. Well, one, I think we got to go to basing. Is one area where I think you might want to take a little bit of time and finish up these models. And some of the bases you have very little flock at all. Others you have quite a bit of chunks of things, and I'm just not quite sure if you're planning to go back and finish these bases up, or if you're going for a different sort of technique here. The white and black kind of spray look is actually something that I've seen some painters do intentionally, and I'm wondering if that's what you're trying to do here. But if you're not, then obviously going back and cleaning these up, putting a nice black lip around the edge of the base, and choosing some kind of color to paint them up is your next step here for sure. Do you guys have a sense of his plans here with the basing?
I would assume the bases aren't finished. That's my only thought. That's got to be, because I've got to say, obviously we need to get that all the way done to complete here. I will say that I like the monochromatic nature of the lizards. It's interesting. We talk all the time about how lizards can be brightly colored, but I think it works just as well in this more muted scheme. That being said, I would agree with you. Like the bases are where we need to go to take this to the next level here, to finish those up. And you're gonna have to be careful on that, because if you make them pop with too much color, then it's gonna overwhelm the model because you've used a muted color scheme.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got to make a careful choice there.
Okay. I got nothing to add.
All righty. Moving on. Thanks, Chris. And we come to Sophie. So this is Mickey's niece.
Yeah.
So let's remind ourselves this is work done by an 8-year-old with a little bit of coaching from the talented Mickey Genver. I think that we've seen a few months of Sophie's work, and it's time to twist the screws on her and give a little bit of hard analysis. What do you think?
Sure.
But what she's taken on here is painting white, which is hard for a veteran, let alone somebody who's just new to this hobby this year. It always has a tendency to end up chalky when you're building it up over other tones, unfortunately, and I guess she's no different than most people end up having their white look like this. Even with the coaching that she's getting, she is able to do some blending. She comes from the socks of the horse from black into charcoal and then into brown and eventually white layered over top. And she's also gone very natural with the muzzle around the mouth as well, and some shadowing around the eyes, which is what most all white horses end up looking like anyway. They have some of that black off coloring that goes in there. So she's nailed the translation of the picture of what a horse looks like into this model. But I'm afraid it's just a matter of patience and control of your water when you're doing white paint, and being willing to do that in 5 to 6 layers, letting them dry in between to make sure that it doesn't end up chalky in the end. So that's the tip that I want to pass on to all you folks, actually, that are trying to do white over a large expansive surface. A couple things I do like here, which I've touched on already, is that transition from the dark to white around the socks, the muzzle, and places like that. I also want to add that if we give us another snapshot ahead, you'll see the horn a little bit better if you give us that overhead. And she's gone with the gold unicorn horn. And Jeff, you'll appreciate she's even gotten into the silver for highlights on there to give it the gleam that's necessary. Big
yes.
Kudos for that. And some creative basing. This shot shows that she's gone searching around the garden and found something appropriate for a woody expanse. It's probably a fallen tree that this thing is trampling over to scare away the bad spirits out of the forest. So
yeah, and a little bit of water effects on the outside, it looks like.
Yeah. So this could have been a tree falling into a lake, and she's emulating that. She's got a couple of reeds springing up there on the left side corner. And then there's, aside from that, if you flip to the last photo here, there's something very important to talk about. And that is that this is Mickey herself. We've teased her a little bit about only using size 1 or 0 brushes on most of her painting and encourage her to start using a bigger brush. So she's making progress here. Making progress.
She's almost got a big enough brush. Yes, absolutely. Very close. And I think it's size 2/0 is what she's using, by the way. So for most of her work, Mickey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. So yes, we got to get up a little bit there. I'm not asking you to be like, James Wappel or something and paint like Jim, where you're using like size 8 brushes. That man could paint with his thumbs and paint a masterpiece, but There you go. All right. Good stuff. I agree. Whenever you're doing an all white horse like this, it's like settle in, because it's going to be a lot of thin glazes to make it all blend, right? I mean, there is no other choice. But very nice. Thank you, Sophie. We hope to see something else from you this month. Okay, moving on. All right. So how about this? We got some fun stuff here. I'll take Lee's Bloodthirster here. Let's see. Jeff, do you want to take my Tree Man Ancient here? And then Kieran, if you want to take the Guild Ball Butchers. I think there's some heavy Guild Ball going on in your area. That's the rumor I've heard. So, all right.
There is a bit of that, yeah.
All right, so Lee with the Bloodthirster. Okay, so as always, Lee loves doing these big monsters. He's done a bunch of big giant monsters, and he's got a real knack for it. Let me just say. So let's get into this here. Things that I absolutely love. Lee has executed masterfully on the color transitions here, on using a lot of different colors, going from this deep purple up to this very bright flesh tone, orangish, yellowish color. Flesh is itself just actually whitened orange. So that's why when people get very tan, we accuse them of being orange, because they are. All flesh is orange. It just happens to have a, like, that is to say, Caucasian flesh tone is just orange with white mixed into it. And you've done a really nice transition here for something that looks organic, but at the same time otherworldly. And what I like is how much it pops. It makes the wings pop, etc. Great transitions there, all around. I also very much like we remember his previous submission of the Star Drake. We can see them staring each other down here on this scenic diorama base, which I love. There you go. They both fit into their little homes very nicely. The Bloodthirster versus the Star Drake. Fantastic. And full kudos to you, Lee, for this great basing. Because I never liked the leaping off of fire nonsense that this Bloodthirster's posed with, but he has taken that and he's pinned this guy to the wall, which makes him look like he's backed into a corner but ready to leap out and strike, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so my thoughts here for you. My thoughts are very simple. Your color transitions on the flesh are A+. I mean, straight up, A+. I love it. It's great. It's just great. Now, your color transitions on the metals are seemingly flat. You have, like, if I look at this here, what I see is not a lot of variation in the steel and in the gold. We're sort of just relying on metal's ability to reflect light, which, you know, gives us some for free, more than that, but it's still not to scale. So what I would love to see, what I would challenge you for, Lee, if you want to take the, you know, big guy like this up to the next level, is let's start working some contrast and shadows and things into this into your metallics the same way you're working into your flesh. When you have such massive transitions on the flesh and then you have any other part of the model that's relatively flat, that flat part stands out because it looks like they're standing in two different kinds of light. So that would be my challenge to you. More worked in here. We may have a wash on this, maybe not. Hard to say, but we could go a lot farther. We could take and apply some heavy shadowing or highlighting up on this gold, on this silver, and really make it pop out here. There you go. Any other thoughts there, gentlemen?
Well, I especially love that he's turned this into an evocative vignette with his Star Drake as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that is just A+ work. It looks great in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just to echo your thoughts on the wings, I think that those are really excellent.
The man clearly has a gift for wings, as this picture shows. I mean, look at the transitions on those two wings. It's just gorgeous all around.
Awesome.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Lee. As always, very, very inspirational. I love this color palette, and I'm going to steal it. So I tell you that right now, Lee. Thank you. Okay. All right. Speaking of big pink things.
Yeah, well, Vince, really, really enjoy your Sylvaneth. I think I said on a previous PmP that they're my favorite of your armies. I like the Tzeentch quite a bit too. I think this is because it allows you to do a lot of things here. Elaborate basing, which you've become increasingly interested in over the past year or two, and it allows you to use a very bright color scheme, but in a way that's not overpowering. You know, it's to make the model look like the trunk of a tree, but to pink and blue and even turquoise really catches the eye. I think this is the type of arm when you're finished with it that could win a best painted at a tournament, because it's going to have the technical skills and also the color composition to attract attention. On the color composition, my favorite part about this model, which you've converted up here, is the way that you transition from the darkest portions of the wood up to the yellowish bone color highlights on it. So like especially around the chest cavity there, you can see how from like the underarm into the chest cavity, you can see you're blending up from what is essentially just a dark brown all the way up to a yellow. And I know that must take a lot of layers of paint to accomplish that. So I really like it overall. Challenge you moving forward. The only thing I could see here that catches my eye as something that could be improved is, and it could just be the photograph, is the pool of water on the base. So the way that you shaded that before you put the water effects down, I wonder if maybe one or two more layers of color to achieve a smoother gradient might do something for that. I mean, it doesn't look bad. It's just I'm trying to think of something that I would recommend to you.
No, it's a good point. Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of went a little like when I was applying sort of the upper layers to that, it went an interesting way. And so I thought, well, I'll keep it and I'll see if I like it because it did look a little rougher. And I thought, maybe that looks kind of like moss or something underneath there. And that was my thought on it when I was doing it. But I do agree with you that it would probably look better if it was a nice, smooth transition. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate all that. I'm certainly not fishing for that, but thank you. I appreciate that very much.
No, I like these models. What's that, Kieran?
Yeah, I was going to say, in my mind, Vince, you have become what I dub the tyrant of teal. Is that your jam? You've become pretty masterful at going through the spectrum of blue-greens.
I have a lot of blue-green paints. I'm not going to lie. It's true.
So keep going. It's your thing.
There you go. We've all got our colors we love.
Yeah. Some of us yell them occasionally on the show.
All right.
Seriously, though, the longer you paint, the more you start to hone in on a couple of colors. Like, I love that combo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Ajax Wargaming and his Guild Ball Butchers. Kieran.
Okay. Well, he says that he painted these over the course of two quick painting sessions, these 4 models. So first and most exciting is the ball. Actually, not really. That's not the most exciting, but but there it is. The most important playing piece, though, just the same. What I want to comment about, I think, if you can, the first set of shots are about the young lady who's leaping off 1 foot. So if we scan ahead a couple there, we'll focus in on this. Now, there is a little bit, and we're going to see it. What I want to talk about for a critique, first off, is the flesh that he's done. Flesh ends up looking a little bit waxy. He does do the transition of dark to light, but I think that there can be a few more series of blends as you go on that journey from dark to light. There's even if we flip ahead, there's an overhead shot, I think, as well, that gives us that. And this is, I'm not pausing here just because we get to look down at cleavage, but it's where the most open expanse of flesh is to use from. So we could have this natural shadow that you're seeing here doesn't occur on the front on shots, but I think that's a place where natural shadow could be painted in. So if we go back, or maybe even flip ahead, I think we get one more shot of her.
Nope.
No, I think we'll have to go back one. Or a couple. When we get the front on and we see that there's really, that's kind of blown out of there. And it looks just like one smooth color from top to bottom on that chest zone. And I think it's the shadow of the lighting that is sort of fooling us into thinking that. So let's move on to the young fella. Another couple snapshots ahead. And on here, I want to say that, well, maybe I'll interject here and say that the color balance is really good, like how you have your reds spotted in different places as a predominant color, and then yellows spotted in different places as well to balance out. The way that balances out here is he's got a tabard hanging down as well as the color of the hair. So that balances well. On this head-on one, I think we can do some perhaps gemstoning technique or glassing technique on the goggles is what I challenge you to do. And then give me another frame. And we see this model from the back side. Next frame over, I think. Yeah. What we see on here that is something for folks to be careful about, as well as Ajax, is that on the axe blade and on those axes that are on the back, those crossing axes on the back, the wash has pooled a little bit, and pooled a little bit unnaturally, I think. So that's something to be careful about if you're overloading wash. Maybe much like white, the answer here is to let that first pass of wash dry, and then come back at it again, rather than try to get your full coverage of wash depth in one heavy glob of wash. That's the one thing I'd say. And then let's go a couple more frames ahead, and we'll look at his last figure model. So on this guy, he has, again, when we're looking at the flesh tone, some hard definition, because this guy's more muscular, so he's got more relief to work with. But I still feel that if we get some other, as you spin through the other snapshots, I think we'll see that the face has enough definition that you don't really need it, but there's a couple of spots on flesh on the arms and shoulders that we need a midway transition on those, I think. But again, color balance is really great. Where the reds are chosen to be put and the yellows are chosen to be put is really good for color balance. It lets you look over the whole model and drink it all in. So this, I understand, is probably half your team at this point. And maybe next month we can look forward to seeing the rest of the team as we go through. That's what I would say about that.
I want to also add in that I think he did an excellent job of painting the tears on the cloth, like the yellow on the guy all the way to the left in this image. You can see how he's got the dark line, and then underneath it, he's highlighted that up with a sharp color. That provides a really nice 3D effect. It's a cool technique.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely agreed. Here's my closing thought is this: Tester's dull coat. That's what you should look into, Ajax, because that will knock this. You got a little high shine on some of this in some places, like that waxy look that Kieran mentioned. You could knock a lot of that out just with a good coat of Testers. So that's my final varnish of that. The only one in the world I will trust.
Cool.
There you go. Okay.
I thought you were trying to make a pun there. Your final varnish.
Nope. No final puns. All right, so let's see. Looks like Amanda Rhodes has two here. So why don't I take Tom Stevens' adventurer, Ludwig von Everett, and then Jeff, if you want to take Amanda's two submissions, and then Kieran, why don't you take Ryan Easterling's army here?
Got it.
Sounds great.
Okay. All right, so Tom with Ludwig von Everett. I love how he gave us a whole story in this, by the way, of this former privateer's life. Very fun stuff. So let me first comment on the basing, because it is pretty fantastic. You've got a lot of nice work going on here with the sort of checkerboard pattern on one side and stuff like that. I understand. I think this is a base from someone. I don't remember where it's from. But you've done a very nice job with it. Your stone looks pretty varied. I see some different brown tones or ruddy tones in here. That's good. Got some dirt, stuff like that. That's very nice. You've dirtied up the bottom of his coat where it's gotten some mud on it, as this guy undoubtedly gets around and does his business, which is a dirty business, as would be the case of any adventurer. So I like that. The whole fig overall has a lot of sort of grime to him, which I think suits him well. I think it's really, really well done. I think my piece of advice that I would give you, if you want to sort of take a next step, is if you're going to have this, the whole thing kind of ties together. The piece here that stands out to me is this shell you've put on the base, which I think is separate. It looks flat. I'm not sure what it's meant to be. I'm not sure why it's there. And it really stands out. Like, it's so flat compared to the rest of this. It just keeps drawing my attention. My eye can't look away from it. And it's this weird little gross, grimy thing sitting on the base that doesn't fit with everything else. So I would say, if you're going to add stuff like this to a pre-textured base or a pre-built base, you need to make sure it falls in line with everything else. My other thought would be most of your highlighting on your black is very clean and very good. I like it. It looks very naturally leather. You have a few lines on here that are just a little too hard. And so if you're going to go all the way up to this light gray over a like German gray, then you're going to need at least one other step in there. Just very short highlight. And that's always the problem with black leather. Black leather is one of the hardest things to paint, period, because it takes its entire color transition over about a 2 millimeters or a millimeter of space, right? In between this would need to be straight black. And then you need to go through like 3 grays in the space of my mouse tip. Because otherwise this looks a little bit stark. One of the ways you can smooth out transitions like this in leather is to mix in just a tiny bit of blue. Leather tends to reflect blue because it's picking up ambient blue light from the sky or whatnot. And you can also work in a little brown because leather will tend to turn slightly brown shaded in direct light. Most leather has a little bit of brown in it, even when it's black dyed leather or black leather. Those are my notes. I think overall this guy's really good. I think he's super fun, and you've done a very good job with him. Any other thoughts there, gentlemen?
No, nothing to add.
All right.
Just to echo what you said about the checkerboard pattern on the base, I think that looks really sharp on that model.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a great bit of flavor. Okie dokie. So Amanda Rhodes, I'll start on the wolf, and you tell me when to go to the elf.
Sure. This is the spirit animal of the other character, which is, I guess, a D&D figure that she's painted as a commission for a friend. If I recall correctly, Amanda joined the PmP a few months ago.
Yes.
And has been posting up since then. That's the correct person? Okay. Yeah. So I have really enjoyed watching your work progress over the past couple of months. I think that your brush control is improving each time that you present us with a new model. And I think this is a great example of sort of improved technique this month with this wolf and also the wood elf. What I like most about this model is the blue flames that you've done. Here we could take a bit of Kieran's advice that he gave earlier, and recommend that you thin out your washes a little bit with a medium of some kind, and do 2 thin coats of wash. Because as Vince is pointing out, you have some pooling there that looks a little bit strange because you have really dark blue in a couple areas, and then the rest of it is this nice ephemeral-looking light blue into white. So that's one piece of advice for you. Do with the basing. You said in your introduction to the other post that these are your first finished bases that you've done. And so first of all, I think they look quite sharp for someone who's just starting to learn how to do basing. So I want to pat you on the back for that. But I want to also challenge you a little bit with it. Piece of advice 1 is I think that you want to go back over the lip of the base with a nice couple thin coats of black to make those look crisper, because right there you got some paint spilled over on the sides. That'll make the model look a lot nicer when you trim that up, clean that up. The other piece of advice I have is for you to highlight up the rock a little bit more, because here it still looks a little two-dimensional to my eyes. You go from a medium gray color to a lighter gray. But I think that with an overbrush technique, getting most of the paint off of a large brush and then very, very gently rubbing it over the texture there of the cork or whatever substance you're using, I think that if you go up one more highlight and just apply it very thinly in that method I just described, I think that would go a long way for improving your basing. Wood elf. So here you've got, Amanda, you've got your typical wood elf colors, earthy tones, green, tan, brown, and all of it works quite harmoniously here. I already gave you the basing advice that I might have given you on this model as well. I think it applies here too. So a piece of advice that I'd give you moving forward is to just continue to push yourself with brush, applying thinner layers of paint, And I think so. If we go to the picture of the back of the model, Vince, so like here's an example where you've got the dark brown on the tan at the top of the shoulders there, whatever piece of cloth that is. Yeah. So the way that you've got your highlighting going on here, I think that you're not really accurately um, portraying the highlight. I think that thinner coats and a couple more coats, and you concentrate uh, that highlight color on the sharpest. It would probably be the peak of the shoulder right up there, and your recesses should be in the recessed areas. I mean, the dark brown that you have at the top doesn't really make sense to be that dark in that area when you have the other color at a lighter point. And as you continue to submit models for the PmP, and I hope that our encouragement is helping you along your way.
Absolutely. Jeff, I don't know if Kieran, if it's happening for you too, but Jeff, you were breaking up a little in that for me. So
Yeah, it was.
okay.
So we lost you. We lost your last comment, but I think I want to pipe in and say if we can get snap back to the frontal image shot of this elf,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to give you compliments about the fact that you have done a very rich job of that robe itself, and therefore Jeff's comments about the shawl or the shoulder overhang, whatever the heck that is. I would expect the same quality there. So I think Jeff's right to call you out on that one, because you've really done a rich tone and blend on the cloak itself. So do that more.
Agreed. So here's my final note. I was just discussing this blacking the edge of the base thing with somebody earlier today who was again questioning me on, is it really necessary? Okay. Yes. The answer is simply yes. It is. Your model will look better with a black or dark gray black edge of your base. And let me see if I can explain it like this. Put a poster on your wall. Now put a framed poster on your wall. Which one looks better? The framed poster. Why? Because you've created a border between the negative space of reality and the world that the poster inhabits. Okay? Let's talk about if you've ever seen a professional chef, like a really professional chef at a nice restaurant, prepare a plate. What do? They put the food in the middle of the plate. What's the final step when it goes out for service?
Wiping off the edge.
Wiping off the edge of the plate. Why do they do that?
Presentation, baby.
Presentation, because that clean, empty void of the white space around the food enhances the universe of that food and separates it from the vaster reality of the table and everything else. It makes it its own world. In the same way, by creating a black negative space between your fig and the rest of the world with the edge of that base, you create the fig living in its own universe on its own flat plane, not spilling over the side into everything else. And this isn't, by the way, I'm not directing this at Amanda. This is just at everybody. It's a simple final step, and it's so easy, and it takes your figs up to the next level. Just black or dark gray, the edge of that base, your life will change. There you go. Soapbox rant over. Okay. All right. Kieran, you're up.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Ryan's business. Actually, flip ahead. I want to come back to that frame last.
Okay.
But let's hold right here for a second. So this is a very angry looking model, a very aggressive looking model. And some of the elements match with that sort of a feel that I get from this, and some don't. So the things that I feel match with this is the way that he's done sort of that brassy armor plating on the very front. The way that he's done his browns and leathers feel good. But the thing that doesn't mesh with it is not the choice of colors of doing red and green predominantly on the rest of it, but the boldness of those colors, right? So I think what would work better for this model, if you were to go in and do it, and you may be able to tone it back if you accept this criticism, Ryan, is dial back on the intensity of the red and the greens that you have in there. You could do that on the red by getting your brown wash again and toning back on that. That could do it. And on your green, I think that probably an overall glaze of a muddy green might tone that back a little bit. So it's not the choice of colors. I'm fine with that. I just want to point out it's the intensity of those colors that I think could help this look out a whole lot. The other things I would say about here, if you actually flip to the left, go ahead one more frame, because I want to draw this conclusion, that on his brassy bits that he's got on the armor, on the chainmail, on the front chest piece, he's done some edge highlighting on there that feel right. However, it falls a little bit short on some of the other silver spaces, like especially the spikes on his shoulder pad and on the edging of the shield. I think that those are spots that could use one more sharp edge highlighting and all that stuff to contrast versus the recesses that you've done with your darker washes. So that's one more thing that I would add. And then flip me back to the very front frame, first frame of this, where we get a look at this glorious shield. Look at that mammoth shield and all the character in there. This is the kind of thing that I think that you can spend some more time on too, and really give some relief to that face that's emerging from the shield. Now this could be done by taking it into a little bit of an ochre kind of a color, maybe in the background around the trim edging is my first idea, so that it can still remain sort of pale and bony where it's coming further out. But I guess what I'm saying is where the face delineates itself, it might be a little bit of a different color as it gets towards the rim on your highlight layer for that. Okay, while still maintaining the darkness of the deeper parts of the wood throughout. That's my suggestion about that I think could be good. But this is a really cool looking model, and your ability to do the shield and bring that thing to life is already good, but I think I'm just thinking of something extra that you could do to really bring that and give it some deeper relief to it. Any other thoughts from you, gents?
Well, I think you nailed it. Let me go ahead and say exactly what I think I heard you saying, but just reinforce it. This ring around here should be quite dark, leaning darker here in the shadow. Bring the edge of this skull up to extremely bright, so it looks like it's pulling out of the shield, right? If you think about a horror movie where like a face or hand is stretching out of a wall, it's very bright at that point where the thing has pushed, that wall all the way out. Saw this a lot watching Stranger Things recently, but it would very much make this pop. My only other quick note is I feel like we're doing some dry brushing on the skin to highlight it. If we're going to do that, let's make sure we focus some of those more highlights up top and then really smooth it out with a few more glazes afterward, because I shouldn't see the rough texture on this orc's skin like that. Little too rough.
Okay. Yeah,
overall,
I guess to bookend
Both
what
you
I
guys.
meant about that shield is that the mid-tone, so you use the same, you've painted it a dark brown, the whole thing, and then you've gone to highlight straight away with the next color, right? And that's the same bone color from the rim all the way to the teeth and the nose of this skull that's pushing forth. So what I'm saying is that there needs to be a mid-level or a darker thing on the outside, so that, as you put it, Vince, that skull face is framed a little bit better, because it is coming to a higher highlight than what it is around the rim highlight.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Yep.
least we
Short
understand.
story. Yeah. Bright things come forward. Dark things fall backward to your eye. So hence you can create the illusion of depth. All right. Good stuff. Okay. Thank you, Ryan. So next up, let's see. Why don't I take Nicholas, I'm just going to say Brown, because I don't resync. I'm going to take Nick's Manfred here. Kieran, we're going to have you take the Angry Redbeard's Grimgore, so that we can have Jeff take your pond. There you go. Your lily
What a
pad
treat
pond.
you get, Jeff.
Absolutely.
I like it.
All right.
All right, so let's turn to Nicholas, and he said So first off, he had some previous feedback, and he mentions that he's brought some of that feedback in. Like he blacked the edge of the base. I love it. I can see it. It's great. So I maybe interesting note on the picture. I I'm honestly confused as to what is going on in the background of this picture. That is to say, like, did we take this picture in front of another picture of from the Book of Flesh Eater Courts, or are these your models? I can't tell. And,
No, that's not. Those aren't models. Those aren't live models.
okay.
That's a photograph.
I thought so.
Yeah, that's a book.
But I do. It's an interesting thing to show him like leading the army. It's like he's in front of a map painting in a movie. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So some thoughts. Okay. Quickly, what we're going for here. I appreciate your attempt to use an incredibly striking, bold color in this blue. It is, we have a bit too much going on here. The bright blue being this bright, crazy, metallic blue, like that is some disco coloration. And it would be okay, I suppose, but you'd have to then really control the color on the rest of the fig or set him appropriately. So the problem you're going to run into here is that he has this massively massive metallic bright armor just exploding, right? And then meanwhile, we have this extremely muted, weathered, saturated horse, and his skin looks similarly muted and weathered, right? And then we have the weapons that are sort of in the middle in this thing, kind of in between. So the problem what we get here is we have a bunch of different sort of saturation levels and brightness levels all on the same fig. So your eye just doesn't know where to look, right? What we need to do here is focus up Manfred. So a couple quick notes. I too have tried the bright metallic. If you're going to do the bright metallic like this, then the answer is don't do it like this. It needs to be very muted in a lot of places. Or the whole fig needs to pop like this. It's challenging to work in bright colored metallics. One of the things you could do is take all the shadows down into darkness. If you're going to have it be this bright, then the horse and everything else needs to also come up and be fairly bright and highlighted. Because your piece is out of alignment right now. You have a lot of different color things drawing me around. By darkening a lot of shadows and using the blue and the metallic only at certain points, or having a lot of lower points of less reflectivity, you would control where my eye looks. The other thing I would say is on the fire weapons. So it actually, let's zoom up to one of these fire weapons. Since there's no actual fire here, I understand you were trying to walk the transition from very dark to very light. If you're going to walk this, we need to smooth it out a little bit. Like I can very clearly see the delineations here. So we need to smooth that down. But what I will tell you is when you're trying to do a weapon that's not actually flame, it would look more visually interesting if your hot point occurred about right here. If this was the white, and then you had dark to red to orange, yellow, white, yellow, orange to regular red, maybe say this tone right here, the difference would be astronomical. Because when you do it straight up, it ends up looking like a push pop. Okay. Whereas if this was hot and like a magical blade emanating energy, where the light is coming down from the sky would actually cause a reflection point. If you put together this light direction with my sight line, which is coming straight ahead at this guy, right? I can't show you that with my mouse because it's 3-dimensional, but just imagine my eye line is looking right here, right? This would be the hot spot where the light would be hitting my eye. Okay. So that's what you fake by doing that kind of highlighting and that kind of look. So there you go. Those are my thoughts. Overall, man, I got to give you just crazy props for having the guts to try such a bold color scheme. And I like the idea. There's something very cool here because blue against fire looks great. We just need a little more work to like make everything else come in alignment there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'd like to add one quick thing here.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, just I think that here make it a little bit more um, busy, or rather they make it hard to differentiate the different parts of the model. This is something Vince was getting at a bit. So like your blue armor here next to the bluish gray cloth that comes out the back of this model and under the horse close together, and then you have the gold color for the armor and the tan of the horse close together. So I think that what happens here is that you have, two very similar colors next to each other in a couple of places in the model, and that makes it really hard for the eye to focus on any one part. So that's something to think about as you're mapping out where you're going to put colors on models. It's worthwhile to take a minute or two before you start and really think through what will this look like when I painted the colors on all parts of the model. Are there any portions that are going to be too close together? That's something to think about.
My quick thought on that is I think the answer for the gold to bone, especially on the horse head and the forehoofs, is just to go lighter with those two spaces. Leave your gold as it is, but go lighter with the head and forefoots.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, that
Agreed.
would work.
Yep. Okay. All right. Grimgore.
With the angry Redbeard. All right. Well, I think I want to focus. Let's talk just a quick second about basing, and then we're going to talk about what's great about this model and how to improve greatness. So fun basing. It looks, even though there's not a lot of whole different tones going on there, it feels like a realistic space that he's standing around on. At least I feel that. I know that you guys are much more into elaborating bases than I am, but that satisfies my aesthetic for sure. But the thing that we want to talk about mostly on here, I think, is what everybody would first look at when you start scanning through these models, about how he's tried to give us the sense of this guy has seen some action with all the scarring and pockmarks and chips and gouges of this guy's armor. So as we rotate around through a couple of snapshots, you're going to see on this one, if we tighten up a little bit, all those nicks and gouges on the fists, on the shoulders, everywhere. They're going on the boots, everything. But most especially on the blade of the axe as well. And I think what I want to talk about here is he's tried to do this on very dark armor, which is the right choice, I think, because you can go straight into some very sharp edging to really sell this idea home. But I want to come back to something that the technique to really push this to looking cool, to looking absolutely great and realistic, is something that Jeff touched on when he was just talking about gouges and leather on the butcher models we looked at a few minutes ago. So every sharp highlight of gouge here that you've done with the high silver needs to be accompanied with a straight black, deep black marker right underneath it, or above it. Oh, sorry, rather above it, for when the light shines, right? So that you can really,
above it, yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be above each of the horizontal slashes, for example, so that you can imagine that the light shining down from the top, you see a gouge where it's darkness because it's deeper in, it's cut away, and then it's the edge where the light reflects sharply back at you, is what was represented by what you have already done here. Okay, so give that a try, I would say, and that will push this cool idea to a really great idea. Include that on your axe blade too. If you can spin me a shot of it so everybody can see the shot of the axe blade facing. Yeah, so you've only got a couple of those lines in there where it's really been left, but they're a bit fuzzed out. I think we sharpen those, and you really get the idea that this guy has chopped through some stuff very recently that has gouged him up and shined his edges. Okay. Yeah, so that's my takeaway from this one.
Agreed. You nailed my thought. Great skin tone. Love the minty skin tone. Perfect orc skin tone. I'll give you a final quick challenge here, Angry Redbeard. Here's a fun one. I won't push you on the base. I'm okay with it. You want to, like, sometimes the environment they're in is simpler, and you've got a lot of interesting stuff. You got a skull, you got a tuft, you got a shield. Here's a fun one, though. He's walking on some kind of earthy dust. You've portrayed this base as some kind of brown dirt. His shoes look pretty clean for having walked through some earthy dust. Dirty up them boots.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Fountain. Kieran, you submitted a fountain.
Jeff, I hope you get to critique something better than this this month. But yes, I sure did do a fountain.
Absolutely. Jeff, do we still have you?
Jeff's on mute. Yeah, I think Jeff's still mute. Okay, well, I'll tell you about my fountain then.
Yeah, tell us about the fountain. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is something when I was doing a bit of cleanup a while ago, I found a few scenery project pieces that were just totally left undone. So I pulled this one forward, and I had a couple of new inks, including one especially spectacular one from a group of people called Secret Weapon Miniatures, and the product is called Baby Poop Wash. So it's a very green-brown kind of thing, and I use that almost exclusively to delineate all the stone on here, and washed it heavily onto that. And then did a little bit lighter green to weather it up, and some brown ink washes. So this really was only about 2 layers of paint, and then the rest of it was ink washes throughout this whole experiment. And I also did my own little lily pads. They were just hole punch things that got dropped out, and then I cut little wedges in them to make them more look like lily pads. And I placed those down after painting the watercolor underneath, and before I put down the water effect stuff over top. That's how.
So did you lay down a bunch of the water effect and then put down the lily pad and then put another small layer of like water effect over top?
Yeah.
Love it. And so these are hole punches, like literally like a hole punch out of a piece of paper that you then cut like a little Pac-Man mouth out of, right?
Exactly.
Love it. That's so creative. Oh man, that's a good idea. Well, another thing I'm going to steal. All right, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, go nuts. You are welcome to it.
Very good. That's fun. One quick note that I want to point out to everybody is notice that, and obviously this was something you, as you said, you did mainly through washes, probably fairly quick. I don't think you were worried about taking this thing all the way up. But that being said, look at how Kieran has worked both some browns and, most importantly, some greens into his rough stone, because the stone sat near water. It's sitting near water right now as we're looking at it. So hence it would have mossy, sort of earthy green textures on it, because life would start adhering to that stone almost immediately. And that really takes it up there. Very important thing to work those kind of colors into stone, especially if they're sitting next to water. So, yeah. Good stuff.
Baby poop.
And baby poop, yes. That is a fun color of wash. I'm familiar with that. All right. I'm not sure if Jeff is back. Jeff, are you back?
Jeff is not back.
All right, that's fine. The two of us will continue then. I will take Bethany Graham's Mr. Toad, and why don't you take Mickey Jenver's beautiful submission here?
Mm-hmm. Be happy to.
All right. So Bethany Graham, newer member of the community, and Bethany, I want to give a special shout out because she's been absolutely very engaged in the discussion and talking to everyone, and that's fantastic. And so thank you very much. That's what the PmP is all about, is that exchange of ideas. Very fun, natural, earthy toad. I don't have a lot of feedback to give you here, Bethany. He looks like a toad. This is one of those times where I think like a satiny, glossy finish is absolutely great, because toads do look like this. Like they jump out of water. They're kind of slimy. It seems appropriate for him to, like, I've seen plenty of frogs and they usually have a weird sliminess to them. So that's very nice. I think that what I would say is, if I'm going to give you one small piece of feedback here, I think we could push a little more shadow or natural gradation or something underneath the toad versus the top of the toad. Just a little bit more. You've got some good. We could push that up a little bit. And I think with the eye, if we're going to lay down the black, toads have when you're working with an eye this big, it's a big expressive eye, and toads have weird eyes. You want to make sure that you really darken that black. Like I can just see how I can see the yellow through the black. If we're going to do, I would look at a lot of reference pictures of toads. And if you've got want to do that eye, that's fine. Just make it sure it's got a nice hard line to it. Or you could do lots of other little stippling and stuff in there. Work some additional darker colors around the edge of the eye. Eyes on a creature like this are so the place where people are going to look because it's the place of visual interest. So like it's where you should focus all of your energy to it. Well, a lot of it, because in the end, if the eye looks really good, then everything else is you're gonna sell everything else too. Any thoughts, Kieran?
Um,
All right.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Let's go here. So Mickey's fantastic submission here. This is from the TGG2, her first painted figure out of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, much like you, she is trying maybe to steal your crown as the Tyrant of Teal. As she uses that same kind of color over here. She's also getting in favor with Jeff by using lots of scorpion bright greens as well. And I think we're all going to say pretty much all good things about Mickey's work overall. What's especially great about this, how she's taken it to another artistic level, and she's gone and sought out a very unique piece to use as a base for this. So she's used some stone geode, I think that must be, that's just kind of cut and polished to be her base standard. So that's not something that she painted. That's a naturally occurring thing in our world, a piece of thing like that. So if anybody wants to do a show piece that matches up, it's worth it's good. It's good exploration. Now, she obviously had this in mind when she was doing the piece because she's reflected some of the same colors from that base throughout the model, in the Enchantress's hair, etc. I want to compliment her really heavily on the subtlety that she's done in the blades and the boots both, that she's really kind of painted in texture into those things to give us a real feel of the craftsmanship that's gone into both of those items. And if you scan me ahead a couple of frames here, let's look at this backside. Yeah. This is where I'm going to come in with my only criticism, just because I got to be picky about one thing every once in a while. So the only color balance that we have of the green that's coming out of there. So we talk about triangulation all the time. And Mickey's had that in mind where she's come to this pillar post that the candlestick is on and brought some green into there, because that's the only other place aside from that smoke coming out of her fist where that appears. But marbling is not quite as uniform as the way that she's spelled it out here. Like, in other words, all those strokes don't necessarily go in exactly the same direction. So you can play around with that and get a bit of multi-direction and overlapping if you look at some marble, or even a little bit more fuzzing out of that, because it looks a little bit too sharp in some places to really be super convincing marble. So that's my only thing that I would like to add. Otherwise, I'm full of compliments already about brush control, positioning, layers, being conscious of shadow, and making your blends very smooth all across the board. My same set of compliments is reserved for you every month, Mickey. Well played.
Yep.
And welcome back, Jeff.
Hey, can you guys hear me all right now?
Yeah.
We can. Yes. There you go. Very smooth.
Good. I restarted. It was a computer issue.
Gotcha.
I wanted to talk about that fountain.
You've missed your window, my friend. Sorry.
Real quick, the lily pads look like Pac-Man. I like that.
They did look like little Pac-Man. I like
Sorry.
I think we just need to shape it a little more, but I'm totally stealing that idea.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the secret later, Jeff.
All right.
Exactly. Okay, I have three quick thoughts on this. One, this is A+ work. It's gorgeous. This model is small and finicky, and Mickey, you've done an absolutely fantastic job. Your hotspots on the metalwork where you've non-metallic metaled it. So let's draw everyone's attention to this candlestick, and we have this excellent light here in this wonderful, wonderful way she's captured the reflection of the dark against the light of the candlestick on each little ridge. Absolutely stellar. Fantastic. Agree on the marbling. And one of the problems is when you do a big scenic base, and this is something that I've learned recently, is you're going to get judged on everything you put forth, right? So if you have less in the model, there's less to judge on. So when you start adding other elements to your scene, you need to make sure they all come up to the same level as whatever you painted. Let me suggest something when we go back to the primary here. Image. And that is this. This is still, like the turquoise is so well balanced, and this just isn't. It's balanced on both sides, but it stops my eye from moving vertically. I have to wonder if we couldn't do an inverted triangle setup here. So her hair creates an upward facing triangle with turquoise right now. I think we can all see that, right? Here's the bottom line, choop, 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 triangle. Yes? Okay. What if these candles were this color green? What if they were giving off this color of light? What if we had turned these candles this scorpion green? Because we're all used to green flame in magical worlds. So then we would have a triangle going choop, 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 and we'd have two triangles on top of each other, right? Wherein they would intersect right here on her face where we want to draw attention to. I feel like that's the one place where we could have helped the movement of the piece just slightly.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Instead of worrying about the green within the marble of that stand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. That's another place for it. Good.
Just a thought.
The only other way to do that would be the boots.
Yeah, the boots. Yeah.
But I don't like that idea as much.
Yeah, because it would look strange against the rest of the metal, which we've clearly called out there. So, yeah.
Right, and there's no like bits and bobs on the boot where you could put that either.
Right.
So it'd be forced.
Yep. All right. But overall, as I said, that's why I started saying all that with it's A+ work, and Mickey knows that her stuff is fantastic, or should, I hope, because it's absolutely great. Okay. All right. Well, welcome back, Jeff. Guess what? You get my branch wraith. So there you go. And then Kieran, why don't you take Andrew Wade's submission up here, and I will take my buddy John's Barbarian. So there we go. All right. Branch Wraith. There you go.
Yes, this is a Reaper Bones figure, apparently.
Yeah, it's about $2. Pretty good deal.
Not bad, and you've done some good stuff with it. It's really, I think you spent more than that on the scenic base.
It's probably true.
Yeah. No, I really like it. This fits in nicely with the rest of the Sylvaneth style stuff you've been doing lately. I really like the flesh on the model. I like the ethereal green highlighted up to almost a very greenish light white. I think that looks really nice on there. Can we skip to image 2 and 3 and cycle through there?
Yes.
Yeah, really pretty. So I think what I want to see is image 2. I think I want to talk about something there. Okay. So here I like the color composition, as I mentioned throughout my commentary of your tree men previously. But my favorite part of this model is actually the tree trunk on the base. I absolutely love the way that you took the flesh color and you echoed that on the highlights of the tree trunk there. So you've gone all the way from a dark brown up into a yellow, and then past that into something that almost looks like a verdigris. It's like a mossy, weathered, worn effect that you've done there. I think that looks really cool.
So can I tell you what I was aiming at doing there?
Yeah, could you?
Okay, because maybe it's not as obvious as I thought. It's OSL from the glowing blade, right?
Oh,
it has a bit of that
yes,
color.
yes,
And then you
yes.
can see it up here in her hair. And if this was, if you were really looking at the fig, you would see that this part of her arm here and here also have a slight filter of this light blue on them as well.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I wasn't quite sure. Yeah, it's one of those things. OSL sometimes the case is that if you hold it in your hand and you move the model, 360 or 180 at least, you can see that effect played out a little bit more easily. Oh, that's a cool idea. So what the blade is supposed to be like a glowing kind of fairy blade or what?
Yeah, sure.
Something like that. Cool. Yeah, so I think really awesome stuff here. You turned a $2 model into a into a showpiece.
All right, Kieran, any feedback for me?
No, well, I guess my feeling about what you were explaining about the glow is that perhaps it could have been more blue than green, especially where it reflected down onto the tree stump. That might have sold that through a little bit more solidly.
Yep.
Just a tone choice.
No, that's fine. I wonder if that's the photo or if that's reality. I'll have to go take a look and see how green that looks in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks very close to the same green as her
skin
tone down there.
Yep. Yep. I don't disagree. I think it certainly does. I'll have to look at it and see if it's my bias or not.
Yep.
Good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was inspired when I was at Nova. Justin McCoy shared an image of a painting or of a fig of like a bust of Gandalf that somebody had won a competition with. And you look at it and it just looked unbelievably detailed and rich and beautiful. And every single wrinkle in his face, every piece of fold, every thread in the linen was actually painted on. What the fig was some 50-cent gumball thing that the guy had gotten out and sanded down and taken the time and painted all the detail into. And I was like, that it is amazing. It's truly, truly stunning work. And this is nowhere near that. I'm just saying it made me think, can you take something that's not as high stock quality base? Because this took a lot of sweat equity to sand and get all the mold lines off of if anybody's ever used bones. And I still didn't get them all. If you look very carefully, you might still spot one here or there. But it's a fun challenge, I would say.
Yeah, I think that would be thinking like a Happy Meal toy and
exactly. Yeah. What can you do with? Yeah. Exactly. Yes, you got it. That's basically what this guy did. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I did that once with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, those little plastic toys. I painted the Bumble, and it's amazing how difficult it is to paint something that doesn't have detail sculpted.
Yep. When you're getting into like having to freehand everything on, it can be a very interesting challenge.
Exactly. Yeah.
All
right. Let's go to Andrew Wade.
All right. Well, Andrew's telling some kind of story here, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. I think that we can tell that this surly fellow has just been into it with somebody and chopped his arm off. Because if you look closely, that's what's stuck down at the bottom left corner of the base. Is a hand that has probably been struck against the stone. You can see that right next to the stone, there's the blade edge that has been carved through as well. If you're looking at the, see what's the best image to see it at? Probably the next frame, actually. If you go to the next frame of photos.
Yep, there you go.
There. Yeah, so you can see that the blade is stuck in the ground over here by the stone, but his cut off at the wrist has sort of dribbled over and fallen down into that little crevice. So tell him a good story there, I suppose. He's in his relaxation mode now that he's done his job. But let's talk about the painting quality here. So Andrew is a fairly accomplished guy as well. He's doing this as part of his battlefield of the brush, he's dubbed it. A little challenge with a couple other folks. Triangulation and color balance is really good here. There's a couple of shots that we get where that tabard that comes down between his legs, the red is also reflected on the shoulders. And you can see it even from the backside when you get spun around. You can see that balance is there, and he's got a mane going up the back of his head, so that color balance goes well throughout the model, and even down into the base where he's got a bit of red on the wrappings of that sword of his poor victim. The color choice of the skin tone actually is fine as well. It complements the red very, very nicely, and he is good enough with his brush control and handling of paint that he gets some smooth transitions which come up nearly to white, so that you can get those subtle ridges on his above his eyebrows and the knuckles and scales that appear on this guy. So you still get a hint of all those things without them being too sharp of a highlight. I'm going to slip in with only one criticism that I can really pull out of all this, and that is that the horns on the top of his head don't quite, or at least not in the way that it comes across in this photo, they don't quite do that transition of color as convincingly as in the rest of the model. It's just not up to the same sort of quality, I don't think. And it might be because he's getting a bit of camera glare off there, which there is a little bit, certainly. But that's my only tiny criticism that I can fit in with. And my only other criticism is, why are there Tyranids in here? I don't understand.
Because that's his armor. If you look at his armor, it's the same as their shells. He has made his armor out of beetle carapace. Part of the challenge was to paint beetle carapace armor, right? That's what he wanted to. That was what he challenged himself with. Was this?
Right.
So he's showing you the original test models he did. He tried on these little Tyranid fellows, and then wanted to show what this guy had previously killed and made his protection out of.
Oh, well, I should probably talk about that then. Well, that looks like it's very much the same. So he clearly achieved that. And brought that over. I made some transfer. Yeah. So mission accomplished.
Absolutely. Jeff, any thoughts?
Not just that this is Andrew's usual high quality painting. I think it's a really beautiful composition, and I love the story that he tells. The gore still dripping from the sword. I think really excellent work.
Agreed. Great stuff. All right. So John, getting back into it. Okay. So here we've got a barbarian guy. I don't know what this is from. I have no idea what range this is from. All right. So, we've got another little guy back here. I didn't see the archer guy. All right. Well, let's start on the barbarian. Things I really like. I like the sort of lightning effect up the center of the sword. That's fine. It captures what you're going for there. I think my main area for you here and is on the skin. Clearly you were going for very pale skin, John. So in that regard, certainly we've succeeded. But if we're going to have very pale skin and it's that translucent, then we would see some more cold colors worked into our shadows because we'd have veins and capillaries and stuff underneath showing through. So a little bit of colder purple or light blues filtered in, along with just a little bit of sort of purpleized flesh might look good here in the shadows. Again, you could take it down a little bit, like you could use a slightly deeper flesh tone, just slightly. But for the most part, you're really trying to create shadows, not tanned flesh. I think that's the main thing that stands out to me here. The other thing I would say is that we've got so much action in the metal on the sword. We've got different like points of light and things cutting across here, which is fine. But then that's the only place it occurs. I don't have similar reflections or flashes on the gold here or the metal of his shoulder blade. They're rather flat by comparison. So if we're going to do that here, then I feel like we need to also carry it down to here. And your response might be, well, this is a super special magical sword. Well, that's fine. I get that. But unfortunately, this gold is also part of this super special magical sword and is relatively flat by comparison. So we want to, whenever we're doing sort of effects like that, we want to make sure we're at least speaking to, we're going to need to find a similar effect over here and so on and so forth to carry it up over here. Okay. Looking at the other guy, interesting model here with the darker skin tone. Don't really have a side shot. The wood looks rich. I like that. It's very interesting overall there. What I would say on him is that I'd love a little more highlight or just a tiny bit of flesh tone worked into the edges of the highlights, his eyebrow ridges, his nose, his lips, his chin, his fingers, because it would make him feel a little bit more alive. I'm not asking you to paint this guy like flesh. He's gray, he's stone or dark skinned, whatever this is. I'm down with that. Totally down with that. But just a tiny hint of flesh worked into the gray can make the thing feel a little more alive. And it will make it pop so much. I mean, I'm talking ultra minimal here. But it'll just, that little bit of that realistic flesh tone worked in will take alien skin tones, grays and blues and reds and anything else, and bring them up to life. If we think back to Lee's Bloodthirster, he had just a tiny bit of that orange, almost flesh tone in there at the very highest highlight, and it made that Bloodthirster feel so vibrant and alive. That's one of the ways it did that.
Yeah, that's a good tip for folks out there on that alien skin tone, just to warm it up a little bit. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've said that before in any of these reviews.
All righty. I like it when we get new things. So thank you, John. Challenging us with some new stuff. All right. Let's move on. Okay, so Christopher Davis had another unit of Saurus Warriors. We're going to look through here real quick. Mostly the same stuff. I think everything we said before still applies. So same rules. We're gonna hold you to this, Chris. You're gonna have to start submitting with your bases finished too. I want to see some finished bases when this unit's all done. I want to see them all together with nice finished bases. All right.
Actually, let's look at one quick thing on Chris's thing. If we can get a side shot of that banner.
Sure.
Do we have anything that's tight on?
Does that look right?
Yeah, because I want to look at his gemstone stuff that he's done in there again. Yeah, I think the transition between your darkest to your midtone on there is too sharp. So your dark on the top side where it's coming through doesn't need to be quite that dark. I know I'm asking you to do there's 1,000 gemstones on here, but a softer transition through that is something to aim for, I think.
Yeah, and really, if you want the cheat, you can do a little under metal highlight with a darker metal on top, lighter metal underneath, and then use the new gemstone paints from Citadel if you want to cheat a huge number of gemstones like this. I agree with you completely. The highlight's too stark, or the transition is too stark. But the other thing I would say is the yellow doesn't work. The gem is the same color as the gold underneath, and when I zoom out and look at this guy from any distance, I don't know that those are gemstones. Yeah. Right? If these were purple or red or something else contrasting to that gold, they would be much more vibrant and stand out much better. Your gems need to, in general, if you think about Eldar Wraith sort of constructs, I guess. I don't know. They're not people, but they're not really machines either. But anyways, if you think about them, people tend to use contrasting gemstone colors. So like when you've got yellow Wraith Eldar, they tend to use blue or purple gemstones or something like that, right? Same sort of thing, so that those gems pop.
And then just one more thing to say on the gemstones is you want to be a little bit more consistent with that white color that you're using as your little highlight, little dab at the top, because if we look at all of these, you've got them in kind of slightly different areas all around. You want to be a little bit more consistent with that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to control.
It
is. Yeah.
You'll get there. You can get there, Chris.
For sure.
You got it.
All right. Moving on. Okay, so Kieran, you want to take this thing here that I did, this diorama, and then let's see. I'll grab Steve's Empire Folk, and Jeff, why don't you take Kieran's Samurai, which Izamu the Armor. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say his proper name. Which I finally own. I'm so excited. I finally got one. So,
oh, good. Glad you did.
Yes, thank you to Dice Miniature Paint Guy for pointing out a good link to me of somebody who had it a good deal. So, thank you, Dice. All right. Take me through it.
Okay. So, on your piece here, Vince, I wanted to ask you, did you paint the backdrop yourself?
Yes, I did.
All right. I was actually showing this off after you posted it. I was showing this off to the wife. And she had some comments about that too, so I'm glad you chose me to
good.
Talk about it. So I'll start with all the good positive, and that is that you've maintained throughout, with the exception of the blues that you've gleaned on the sword and the lake in the background. It's all dusky colors, muted colors, appropriate for exactly the preposition that you're putting forward here. The blends are all soft because you would have nothing very sharp except for in a couple of very localized spaces. One of those being the top of the tombstone, which you've hit, and any sharp edges of metal, such as on the blade and the lantern. Everything else is very smooth. It's soft, and it's a bit washed through. So I compliment you for nailing all of that stuff. The one comment that the wife had was, well, there's something weird about these trees and the way that they grow away from one another in the branches. So So that's a small thing. I think that the stems come out at pretty sharp angles on a couple of ones. The ones that are kind of trying to reach across and touch in the middle feel mildly unnatural because they come sharply straight across without growing up at a proper angle. That's one thing she pointed out, and I guess I kind of mildly agree if I'm to be truly critical about it. Finishing up on the good, I think that moon looks great. You have done the craters and there's probably a name to that feature. If I'm a NASA guy, that I could probably tell you what that is, or maybe you know what it is. That sort of spidering that's on the moon.
I don't. I just saw it in photos and did my best to try to replicate it, but I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, so fantastic job on that, though. You nailed that very nicely. And the sharpness that you've done over top of your glow on the sword blade, of course, is something that everyone who looks at this will notice. And so I got to give you good compliments for nailing that properly. That looks really great.
So I will say that I completely agree with you on the trees. Actually, after this photo, as I was staring at it, I thought the same thing. So I went back and kind of worked with those branches some on the background. Like I popped it back off and did some more work on the branches to kind of create some more branches, create some more directionality to a few of the pieces. Just try to make it look a little more natural. Because I agree.
Yeah, good. If you ever do stuff like that in the future, watercolor paints are a great thing to work with for these kinds of things, especially because you're doing soft stuff. I don't know if you own or have worked with those kinds of things in the past, but my father does, and he gave me a little bit of tutorial about working with watercolors on these kinds of things, and it is a world of difference when you're doing this kind of soft medium that you're trying to emulate here. It's really good for it.
It's a good point. No, I don't, but it may be worth looking into. I do like painting backgrounds. It's fun to create a bigger world for the miniature to inhabit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. So bravo. I appreciate your work there. That's on the upper echelon of good stuff.
I'm pretty happy with her.
Yeah,
Jeff, any thoughts? You've given me some good stuff in the past that I've used in my competition stuff, so I'm all for it. Kieran already nailed the first one. I happened to catch it, but he was dead on.
Yeah, no, that was gonna be mine too. After I saw this on Twitter when you posted there first before seeing it on the PmP, and I commented on it. I really like it, and then I saw this like a day later when I was scrolling back through my tweets, and yeah, same thing that Kieran was saying about the branches. I think maybe it'd be helpful to work from like a reference picture of like a tree at night or something. Just thinking about it moving forward, but I'm really impressed with the way that the model and the background work so harmoniously together. I think that the colors that you've used really evoke this moonlit, gravestone scene. I think it tells an excellent story. And my favorite part of the model, besides that, is the way that you've got the glowing sword. It's a very gently glowing sword, and also the whatever that is that's attached to the belt. Is that like a mace, or is it a little lantern, or what is that?
A little lantern, yes. All of the Kingdom Death figs carry little lanterns.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. That's a cool little thing. But yeah, no, I think that the way that you've highlighted up the blue there looks really good. And there's an example. You were talking a couple of entries ago about the sword of the Manfred.
Yes.
Here's a good example of what you were talking about, Vince, where the focal point is the center of the sword rather than the tip. And so if you had done it on the tip here, it would have looked very off. And so that's a good example of that sort of thing. But overall, I think this is excellent.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. All right. Moving on. I always hate looking at my own stuff. Okay. So Steve, with his Iron Swelled Arsenal submissions, he said in the comments that basing is undecided because he's going to base his whole army. Cool, no problems. Then we leave that out of the discussion. I won't ever hit you for basing if you tell me you're waiting on a basing scheme. I can totally get that. I'm okay with that. I don't mind that one bit. Sometimes you got to get a little bit into an army before you really decide on what the basic scheme is. I get that. Okay, so Steve, Steve and I have been trading back and forth on Sylvaneth for this, this month and the month before, and he, I believe, got a best painted at the recent tourney that was attended there with his Sylvaneth. So congratulations to Steve. That is well deserved. Ben Curry of the Bad Dice podcast has a video up or shared the video where Steve is talking about it. So these guys look great. Interesting thing about tree people they don't have that this army does have in spades is metal. So we're back in the world of metals. And here's what I'll say. We need to do some more with these metals, Steve. It's, that you've got some fun colors going on here with your Empire guys and your Dwarf guys. Your color placement is top notch. The hair on the Dwarves, I really can't compliment enough. Their beards are so wonderfully blonde and organic and fantastic. These two. And then obviously this guy, very, very natural. Great highlighting on the beards. Skin looks very solid. No pushback on any of that. I think I'd like to see maybe a little more with the red, but then again, here's what I'll say. Photos always wash out red highlights because they just do. So I'm going to assume, knowing Steve, that red is actually more highlighted than I can see, and that it doesn't look like that in real life. So pass on that. Because when I look on everything else, his purple has these wonderful highlight spots. His flesh does. So I'm just going to assume the camera killed the red highlights. But the metal, it didn't. The metal, I can tell, is fairly flat. Like when I look up at these cannon barrels, this is more or less the same color as this on the bottom side of it. So here's what I want to see here. I want to see some dark spots, some more browns, especially an organ gun. I don't care how much these dwarves scrub this thing. This thing is going to have brown tones in it because that gunpowder is going to sink into the metal. The tips of these things. I'd love to see you get out the pigment, go nuts. Let's see some char worked into the end of the barrel where it's been firing a lot. And, there's like gunpowder residue on the edge of the barrel here where it's kind of been chalked up over time. All that kind of stuff can make these kind of weapons of war feel much more real and used. Mud on the tires. Like when you get out these kind of vehicles with a lot of heavy metallics, when you look at how people do like Night Titans and stuff, they'll often just do flat metal, do a highlight like with an airbrush for the metal parts, not the armor plates. And then, they kind of might line it. But then after that, they go all into weathering and streaking and stuff like that, because that's how you can really make a lot of it feel real. So I'd say you got two options. You can take some darker shadows, work in some sort of non-metallic styles into it, or you can bust out your weathering and your streaking grime and your pigment, and you can go to town. Either one of those is going to that would be my challenge for you as you move through the Iron Swelled Arsenal, because if you're doing a lot of the Arsenal, you are going to have a lot of chances to work with that stuff. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts there, gentlemen?
No, I like your idea of ashing out the gunpowder of the muzzle. That has to happen.
Yep. Yeah, I think also one last thing I'd add is a little bit more interest or highlighting or something on the Hellstrom rocket batteries, like the bases of the rockets, the black parts. I don't know. To my eye, it just looks like there isn't quite enough there. It looks like he's just gone. Steve, you've just gone for some thin line highlights on the ridges, but the whole shaft being a flat color. I don't know if you plan to slather it with varnish when you're done. That's a possibility. But if you're not.
Can you hear me shaking my head, Jeff? I'm not sure.
That's why I said in that soft, seductive tone, Vince, just to sneak it past you. Mm-hmm. No, but I think given that you're probably not going to do that because you're a sane person, unlike myself, you probably want to do some sort of something on the shaft. Let's just leave that one alone, by the way.
Mm-hmm. I'm walking by it.
Yep. But that's my 2 cents. Otherwise, I echo what Vince says about the metal and what Kieran said about the metal as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Go on.
So, Jeff, here we go with Kieran's Izamu the armor. I love this guy.
Well, this is where you can make up for your missing out on the fountain.
Yeah. All I see is Pac-Man. No, I'm just kidding. So first, let me let me say that I think that you did a great job with the three primary colors here. It the tendency when
Oh, did we lose Jeff again?
Oh, we lost Jeff again. He got cursed. I
Oh,
promise
boy.
everybody who's viewing that I am not pushing the mute button on Jeff when he starts talking about my stuff.
Yeah, about your models.
That is
I
not
think I
what's
see.
happening.
I smell a conspiracy here.
That is not at all what's happening.
Okay, well, I'll give Jeff a moment, and I'll talk about some things that are fantastic here that people should notice and pay attention to. So many little things. One, the freehand on these banner poles or whatever. I'm not sure what they're. These probably have an authentic name. I don't know what that name is, but fantastic, good stuff. I love that you've got some. Are these real? That's what I'll ask. Are these real characters?
No, just
Oh, I always love it when people work real words and characters into their stuff. Like on my girl there, her sword, you notice it had words etched in it. That's like the Latin word for sadness was the name of her sword. But anyways, all right, so that's okay. I'll give you a pass on that one, Kieran.
I sometimes do that, but on this one I was like, no, I'm not gonna bother. Just gonna make some shapes to look cool.
That's okay. I'm still down with your cool looking shapes because they do look very cool. And that's what, so for anybody else, when you're looking at flags and banners, take note of what Kieran's done here. He's used a couple different colors. He's got some very simple designs, but they really pop. Oops. And just make that look absolutely great. The other thing I want to note is what you've done with the blade, which is fantastic. So is this a slight return at an attempt at a somewhat sky earth non-metallic metal for you? Was that what was in your mind here?
No, what I was trying to do was do some sort of ethereal glow, and I'll tell you that I backed off on something on this.
Okay.
And that is that there's two ways to put this Izamu model together around the face that you might have noticed if you're playing with the kit now, and that is that you can do him without a face altogether.
Right.
And he would just be like just an empty socket where his spirit would be emulating from. So that was going to be an ethereal glow his face. I was also going to do an ethereal glow coming out of the places where he's been punctured by arrows, and then as a balance to that, do the similar thing on his blade. I failed at doing the arrow punctured places properly, so I repainted over top of that and left it for the time being. But that's effectively was the reason the blade's done this way, I guess, is that's the long-winded way of saying it was for a balance, a factor for the face and what was going to be the puncture holes.
Gotcha. Well, I like the effect. I think it looks quite good as the sword. Like especially that shot's a great image of it there, and I think it's quite effective. I like the red lamellar. I think that looks quite nice as your armor color. I agree with Jeff's original concern with you. You've used the primary colors here fairly well. I mean, this guy's really red, blue, and yellow, right? And did the arrows? I haven't opened mine yet to put them together. Do the arrows like come with him, or was that your addition?
No, they're part of the package.
Okay, got it. So I think overall, I like how this is. It's a good example of how you can use all three bright colors. Now, one of the things that you did here to return back to something earlier that I think helps is you desaturated your red some, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this isn't a bright. This goes back to if we think back to the orc. The red here is much more muted in its tone than that. It's not a full on. You didn't go for like a full on bright red, like a cherry red, and that's good because that when you have three extremely saturated primary colors all fighting for control, it's going to cause a lot of chaos to your eye. But because you desaturated it here, it looks good. I guess here's my thought for you on this. The only thing that jumps out to me, I think overall is, oh, by the way, the red looks a little flat, but again, I'm going to assume that the photo just knocked the highlighting out of your red. I'm willing to bet there's a lot more highlighting there. Am I correct?
Yeah, it did a little bit.
Yeah. I figured as much. It's so hard to review red models on photos. So here's my one thought. With the let me get a shot that shows it. Here you go. I am not like I love that you used the red here on the banners, but the red freehand, that one color, feels a little flat. Does this have more tones in it that just aren't coming through?
No, I'll admit to you that it's just the ink pen on there. So there's no shadow side to it. So it is as flat as you think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see a little variation in that to kind of spice that up a little bit, right? Where, because assumingly this was painted on not by him. I mean, I don't think Azamo the Armor's walking around making his own banner poles. So somebody did that, and there would be natural variations in, the pigment as they painted the strokes or whatever, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it could create some visual interest if that had a little more variation to it. That's really the one thing that stands out to me. Is everything else has such wonderful color variation. I don't mind it with black because black is black, right? So when you get to black text, it's like you don't need to do a whole lot to it. It looks fine. People, we're used to seeing black and have it look solid on something as writing, and that looks okay. But with this, I think I would just like to see a little more. Just a small note. Overall, very cool.
Yep, I accept that. Truth.
Fair enough. All right. We'll have to wait for Jeff to get back, but we will move on.
It's really not a conspiracy, people.
I do love it. We'll move quickly. I have some Sylvaneth here. If you have any thoughts on them, that's fine. But we can move quickly since they're basically in the same scheme as my previous Tree Man.
Yeah, they're really reflecting the same thing as what you did on the Tree Man that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
Yeah, color balance is still all there, as far as I can tell, on these things. And yeah, all the same techniques carried over. So I'm fine with that. I'm not going to fuss you about the base, actually. I think I like the sort of spectral lakes that these guys hang out by. It's not as natural as real water would be, but neither is teal branches either. So
right, yes,
we're in a different realm here.
Yes, that was the goal, to have a more magical looking, like kind of, yes, otherworldly water effect. Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. You're right. Teal branch is not super common. All right. So why don't you take Victor's item here, and then I'll take John's wizard.
Okay, sure thing. So it's a little Victor stuff. Well, Victor's another one of these guys that we get to sort of look upon in awe. So let's pick out a few things that we want to talk about as far as using this as a tool for teaching others. What we see in the flesh tone of this fella is there's some red and purple that goes into this. If you really pay attention to the subtleties that go into the flesh tone on this guy, you can see that there is some reds in there, and there is some purples as well. In fact, that model we looked over once before, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Do I remember that right? Yeah, we looked over this priest model once before.
Yes, I had done one last month or 2 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, this is the same dude. When we get an over-the-shoulder shot, you can see that he's done some cool stuff with drawing on the book, and we always like that kind of addition. You get in this shot here. Victor's always been really good about highlighting anything gold. So when we look at the trim and the lighting zaps around the trailing of the cloak, as well as on the hammer, that's all spot on. So maybe we should spend some more time talking about the doggy.
Mm-hmm, the dog.
The doggy. So he's gone out with to carry over some of the colors from one model to the next. He's made the right choice by putting the teal on as the feathers. You guys are going to the same school, apparently, about teal. It's a popular thing.
It's a great color.
It is a great color. What comes across in this one, Owen, is I guess probably one of the few opportunities that I ever get to give Victor some criticism, is that throughout the bulk of the rest of this gray part of the model, there's very little variance outside of what's on the head. So when we get down, it's not until we get down to really the toes on the lower haunches that it kind of returns to a little bit of color change there. But I feel like there should be some kind of color variance as we go across the back and on the rear haunches at the very least, which doesn't seem to be there. So that's my one tiny criticism to point out in the grand scheme of things. And can probably do, if we look real close at the spotting that he's done on that. could be some depth in there. Much to the same criticism that you gave me about on the banner about putting 2 colors into that red to make it look like depth. That could be done on the spotting of these things too.
Yeah, the spots was my thought too. So one, I don't feel like there's enough variation in the size of the spots.
Yeah.
I feel like we need little itty bitty dots going up to like bigger splotches. Spots on creatures tend to be very random in the way that they're because they're a just completely random pattern. And the other thing I would notice, if they also feel very solid, right? When in fact, if you look closely, I wouldn't recommend getting close to a leopard or a tiger or something that has stripes or spots. But if you do look closely at pictures of them, they're not uniform. That is to say, this spot isn't actually uniformly black or whatever, right? On a creature, there's bits of gray fur mixed in there as well, right? And you can achieve that a couple different ways. You could take the edge of your brush and kind of just stab at the edge of the spot, just very, very slightly to kind of break them up.
Yep.
Or you can take the gray and kind of glaze lightly over it, over the black to bring them back together a little bit. And that little bit of gray filter over the, because I'm saying gray and black because this is gray and black, but you would use whatever your undercolor is. So he would use gray here in this case. You go over it and it will filter that black to have a bit of that tint to it. And it can be a way to bring it more back into tone to make it look like there's a little bit of that gray fur mixed into the black.
Okay, good. Well, let's go forward from that one because a few other good things to talk about. We should also say that, we should allow Victor to take a little bit of time off. Sometimes we have the expectation of showcase quality out of this man all the time. And maybe it's okay that he just backs off a little bit now and then.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm
He's
sure
just
like the
taking these for the
scuttlings
sake
here
of-
were a fun little speed paint for him, right? And that's okay. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's my feelings of probably what he was going through with these grotlings is just, these are game pieces. They're not showcase pieces, and
Right.
they're certainly high quality, but they don't always have to be your top end. So we'll give them that. Allow that. But however, when we come into these horrors, all of them are really wonderful. Like he has a good mastery of. He's done pinks a lot on his Harlequins and other things, and I really appreciate that. So this pink horror especially is really brilliantly done, and you get a full depth of transition in there. Again, he's showcasing his ability to do gold very nicely on these things, very greatly. But there's one, and I think it's maybe the next frame or the frame after, where he's locking in on a blue horror. If you can skip to that one.
Oh.
No, one back. Yeah, if you look at this blue horror here, he's actually done a fire reflection across his brow as well. From the plumage that he's blasting off.
Yep.
So even that extra bit, for game pieces is really brilliant. So good show on that, Victor.
I agree. I think these horrors are great. They're absolutely fantastic. I love the little touches, like the little purple spots on the end of this guy's, tentacles or tendrils here, kind of thing that doesn't need to be there. He didn't need to do that, but yet he did, and they look great because of it. And I agree, these are game pieces. It's, you're going to be handling these things playing a board game. It's not quite the same.
No, but still, he's come back to the top quality we expect out of Victor on these Zangors. And with the gold and the richness that he has put into these things, if you look at the sword blades and the horn headdresses on that one in the center, really wonderful.
Agreed.
So that's a calling card of this man, and I try every now and then, not all the time, Victor, I'll admit, but every now and then I try to emulate the quality that you put into your golds when I do my own painting.
Yeah, it's really worth noting here. Like this main two-handed Zangor here has gold, horn tips, right? And I talked earlier about flat metallics, and it's so worth noting how well Victor navigates making metallics more interesting, because the way he's worked shadows into this gold down here on the underside, highlighting up to this extremely reflective tip. This is exactly what I'm talking about, and it's so fantastically done here with this.
Yep.
So here's where I would challenge you further, Victor. This side is correct. This side is not. Okay. What I mean by that is, we think about light coming down and hitting this thing, the light hits here. This is your hot spot on the top. This is in shadow. Coming down, light is going to collect here, right? And this underneath on the bottom side of the tip would actually be the shadow, countering the light of the edge of the outer side of this side. So they would actually be inverted, right? This would be light, this would be dark. A small note, but nonetheless, that's a, if you really want to get nitpicky. These guys look fantastic and awesome color choices. The way he's worked in the pinks, the purples, the blues here. These guys look so wonderfully Zinchi. I also want to point out Victor's gem work. We talked about the gems earlier. There's several gems on these guys that he's blended wonderfully smoothly here.
Yeah, agreed. He does something extra too that I've noticed on many of them. He does a couple of points of light on many of his bigger gemstones instead of just that single point that we often do.
I think that's 1 point he painted and 2 reflections from lamps. That's my thought.
Yeah.
Because I think it's gloss medium. So I think it's actually hitting the light.
Okay.
My thought. Tell me if I'm wrong, Victor. But
yes, welcome back to the fold, Jeff Egan.
Hey,
yes.
Can you guys hear me all right?
We can. Yeah. Once again, we see how it is. You just don't want to review Kieran's models. Look at you trying to skate out every time.
Is that what actually is going on, Jeff? Are you skipping out on it?
Yeah, I just can't bear to critique you. So, I'm just running away from it in fear. No, I changed devices, and now it looks like I'm sitting in like a dark room from some sort of horror movie. But anyhow, I'm back.
Well, don't worry. No one can see you anyways. It's just fine. We're looking at the pretty models, not your wonderful face. It's all good. Okay. So let's go to John. So John's doing another figure here. What I want to comment on with John is wonderful, like Hyrule Link shield there, by the way, I think is what he's emulating. I had done a video about painting the color purple. He has some great transitions here on this purple. So I think, John, where you really succeed with this model is in these in the purple spectrum on this stuff. Like this, the cloaks, the blends are so smooth. They look great. Well done. I have no distinct feedback on it. There are things you could do if you wanted to go up to another level. Like you could put some freehand on this cloak or something like that. It's a big empty flat space. Perfect place to do some freehand. But that's, I mean, like I said, not necessary. I'm not docking any points for that. Don't have to. Your blends are great. The metal is where you fall down. The metal here is, and I don't know if it's the figure, but I see like roughness here in the metal. So I don't know if that's the figure underneath, the primer, the metal paint itself. There's lots of ways that this can occur, but it looks really rough. The other thing I would say is I don't see enough hard line distinctions. Each of these are plates. Each of these would have major shadows and points of light and stuff like that. So what I would want to see here is much more darkness in the individual ridges in between the plate, whether that be through black lining or anything like that. So yeah, that's my initial thought there. If my only other thought is if you're going for a purple, or like if you're trying to make a non-metallic metal gold, which you mentioned in the comment, yes, purple can work as the shadow color on that, certainly for old gold. In fact, it works great as the shadow color within non-metallic metal gold. But if you're going to do that, non-metallic metal gold, it has to come up to white. Like you have got to get pure white onto there in some way in a contrasting highlight. And if I were looking at this model, it would sit right about here if I was going to do a single hotspot, and it would sit right about, so I'd put it about here and I'd seat the other one probably here and make it a little more muted. So here to here, because the light is going to hit the ground and reflect up and bounce right there where my eye meets it. And that's the important part to realize about metallics and doing non-metallic metals is there will be light hotspots in shadows because the reflectivity of metal is, near 100% when it's polished. That is to say, it will gather the ambient light from anything, and light is bouncing off of the floor, his cloak, the hilt, everything. It's hitting the entire universe and bouncing back at this sword. So it's going to create a spot of light, even in shadow points. It should be muted. It's not going to be as bright as the one in direct, but it should still be there. Those are my quick thoughts.
Okay, all good.
All right. Okay, so let's see. Why don't I take Sean's Sauruses here? We got some more Sauruses. Sauruses of a slightly brighter stripe. Kieran, why don't you take Robert Chisholm's French and Indian War minis? And then we'll talk about Chris Davis's Sauruses. We'll just take a quick look for his number 3 unit of the same stuff. And then Jeff, you can take Victor's Ogroid Thaumaturge that was recently featured on Games Workshop's Facebook page. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Sean. Okay, opposite direction completely from Chris, like as far to the other side as we can go. I talked about how Lizardmen can have muted color schemes or vibrant. Boom! You went all the way. Color explosion in hyper saturated colors. I feel like this is like the opening of Saved by the Bell here. So I love the idea. I don't know. This has never occurred to me of having a Saurus unit with lots of mixed bright colors. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody do it. I love it. Why not? They're all spawned from like a bunch of different pools. Theoretically, the Slann have mixed in different genetic codes. I'm down with it. So I like that. I think it's super fun. And the one that really stands out to me as the one you absolutely nailed is this one right here, front and center. I love the green to yellow to red transition. This is fantastic. Good stuff. I like this one very much. We got a couple others that are playing in the same space. This guy back here with the deeper teal up to the sort of very, we'll call that a sort of slight yellowish green. I like that. Same with him. They're good. Where you're falling down is in your metals. They're not matching all the vibrance of your flesh tones. I mentioned this earlier. You've got hyper highlighted and contrasting and bright and varied flesh tones, and then your metal is just there. It's just metal. Like on this blade, there's just nothing going on here. You've got some wash that got collected in the shadows, and we called it a day. What I need to see here is some gold to silver 50-50 mix or something. Highlighting the edge here, the ridges, the edges, catching some light there. I need to see some darker chestnut colors down here on the bottom, things like that. I think that if you do that, these are going to just really be stunning looking miniatures all throughout. And I really mean that word because just to finish out here on things I really love, your basing scheme here is pretty good. If you're using something like a little bit of realistic water, I might do one more little application after you lay down all of this flock and stuff. It feels like you put down the layer of stuff and then you kind of set some things down on top of it. I might do another thin layer of like realistic water or whatever on top, just to kind of look like everything's a little more immersed, a little more unified. But you've got so much great tonal variation in the bases, lots of different plants and tufts. It's good. Don't be afraid to put some paint on your tufts. I talked about that in a recent video for my hobby cheating on doing Sylvaneth bases. When you've got tufts like this, especially these that are very flat, make sure you flatten them way down. Just take a drop of wash on the end of a brush, drop a little drop of Agrax, push it into the center. Watch the difference. It will be amazing. One, you take your brush, you dip it in the Agrax, you push it down into the center of this thing, you pick your brush up, you're done. The difference will blow your mind. And it's literally 1 second of work. So there you go. Any other thoughts there, gentlemen?
I saw a couple shields, his high color shields that I think need a bit of wash to delineate the scales on them. I don't know if you get a good sidelong view of him in any of the snapshots that he's taken, but even that frontal one, you can see the one that's just to the right of center with the green.
Oh, shield. Yeah, here. Yeah, okay, yes.
That certainly needs to have that scale identified a little bit better because he's done it on the models themselves. He just needs to pull it out on there.
Yep. Good catch.
Yeah, and Vince, you nailed my my major points as well.
Very good. All right. Let's Let's move on to Robert Chisholm. I'm so glad Robert is a member of our community because not enough people do fun historicals, and Robert's just knocking out great historicals every month. So take it away.
Well, topically, I was at my hanging out with one of my club guys today who he himself, this fellow I'm talking about, enjoys historical stuff as much as he does fantasy stuff. And I was telling him about this, and actually was talking about Robert's blessings that he gives us to give us something historical to look at every month. So I'm going to encourage this guy that I'm talking about, Andy, to join in here and share his historical business with us too, because it's a mildly different paint style than the fantastical things that we've been doing. Even the subject material of like having this guy on the far left, for example, who looks like he's just come out of his shop in a hurry with his shotgun to chase away the bad guys, right? He doesn't have any tricorn hat or uniform like the rest of the dudes. He's just like the townsfolk. So the subject material of what we get in this historical range that Robert offers us is a good blessing to look at. He's even got a guy in the second row there on the right side that's wearing a wig. So that guy's obviously got a different job during the daytime instead of being a revolutionary at a full-time basis. So when we talk about this throughout, I always bring attention to a technique on Robert's stuff of blacklining, where he delineates very strongly between where one piece of cloth ends and another begins. So even when you look at the whites, when it switches to the coat in the red, or in the blue to the green, you have a bit of a sharpness there, right? You have a sharp black line on the shoulders and those kinds of things, which is a very powerful technique to do. You have to be very tidy with it, because obviously that can go wrong if your hand's not steady and you skew it a little bit, especially when you're doing it right next to white. So you have to be a bit careful with it, but it does really define a model and make it visible for these tiny 1-inch tall things at a distance of 3 feet. And that's a valuable technique that I think can pass on to whatever you're doing. So that's always a good takeaway from looking at Robert's business. And I thank him for that. Another point to reinforce what I mean is if you look at all the buttons on these guys, you can see those buttons from way out here, right? From way far away, because of that technique of doing that black lining around there. So bravo to him for that. One other thing that I think is the thing that I want to add and challenge you to do, Robert, is I know that we're trying to be subtle for the most part on here, but I think that on the black tricorn hats, which we see all across the board here, we can go to just one more smooth level of highlight on there on the tricorns where they meet, because I think that on a couple of them that's a little bit lost, and you sort of lose the shape of them a little bit with this snapshot anyway. Yeah, so there you go. That's my pluses and minuses of Robert's stuff.
Very good. Yeah, my only quick thought is I want to point out to everybody that so I'll ask this to both of you. Who is special here?
The dude in red?
Exactly, the guy in red. Yeah, Robert really compositionally for this unit has done a great job. He uses very desaturated, muted, natural tones for everyone else except the guy who's clearly in charge, right? Who has this brilliant, bright red coat and just stands out as the obvious sort of leader. It's a great lesson on using more natural colors and more muted colors on things, and then having one person have a very, very very saturated color as your primary sort of commander to draw the eye. It's a great story on unit composition.
For sure.
All right. Okay, so let's look at Chris. Much of the same things, I think, as before. Oh. We have one little Saurus. There we go. There's the rest of them. A lot of the same stuff. You know, Chris, one thing I didn't say on the scales on some of the previous ones, I think if you've still got a lot of, like, it's clear you're dry brushing the scales, which is fine. It's a great technique for things like Saurus. I would challenge you to throw down a glaze over this when you're all done. See if you can't smooth that out a little bit. A very thin, like black or gray glaze to kind of bring the shadows in and cuts in tone and smooth out some of that chalkiness of the dry brush, I think would really go a long way. That's one more note that occurred to me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the Ogroid Thaumaturge.
Yeah, well, Victor said in his introduction here that he's working on his color transitions. So he wanted to make a nice smooth gradient going from, for example, turquoise to dark purple to pink across this model. That's something that I really think he accomplished. If you look, starting at the base of this model, we've got the dark purple, and then moving up to the knees, you got teal, then back to dark purple again, up at the shoulders, into purplish red, and pink at the very tip. So I think mission accomplished there, Victor. I think you've really portrayed the magical qualities of this strange creature from the Silver Tower. So I think that's great stuff. I like the color choices as a whole. I think that they all work very nicely together. And I'm really impressed with the amount of time and attention to detail that you expended to paint these tattoos. I think that those are really nice and sharp, and I think that they add quite a bit to the model. My only critique for you is on that note of the tattoos themselves, and it echoes something that Kieran said a moment ago about blacklining, which was done in a very different way in these other models. But what I find when I paint freehand, either on flesh or on a banner or what have you, I like to go in and on the bottom portion of each piece of the symbol, do a thin dark line of some sort. I usually use black. I suppose you could use something different, but we have a picture of like the tattoos on the shoulder. Could we zoom in on that there? On maybe image one. Yeah, zoom into that.
Yeah, I will say these are cut into the model.
Oh, the tattoos are cut into the model. I never knew that. I thought they were free-handed by the GW staff.
Nope.
Okay.
These are part of the model.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, if you look at the one on the Games Workshop website, it looks like they've got black as like an outline for them. I guess they just didn't paint. They just left a black recess around it. Either way, well, I guess there'd be no way of going back and doing that if you've already done a glowing, orangish color for your darkest point there. Yes, there'd be no way of going back and blacklighting.
You can, but it's super hard. Like you'd have to sort of tip the model at an angle and get not even black wash, but you'd have to get black ink, which is a little bit more bold, and sort of get it to hang on the, I guess on the indenture of each of these.
Okay, well, scratch that, Victor, because you've already
take it back.
Yeah, you've already put in dozens of hours on this model, probably, or at least a dozen hours on the model. So, well, regardless, that's something that I think about when I do freehand. But you're doing something very different here because it's already, I guess it's not embossed, it's debossed, I think, or whatever the term is. But
engraved, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Engraved. Thank you, Kieran. Yeah. So no, but overall, I think that this model is lovely, and everything from the wood grain to the base to the gradation that you've accomplished, going from the dark purple to the teal and back again. I think it looks really solid.
So here's my thought on what we could do. You tell me if you think this would work, gentlemen. How about this? What if instead of going to a darker spot, what if we go to a lighter spot? What if we had a white angular hot spot tracing its way through these tattoos at an angle? Like zip a little white there, a little like you smoothed out white, a blend up to white here, 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 right? So they would kind of create some hot spots of energy in there to make it look a little bit more moving and flowing and alive.
Yeah, and then you could also maybe do the shoulder, like a couple of spots on the shoulders as well.
Yep, kind of like.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that could work. Yeah, just something to make them look a little bit less two-dimensional, because despite the fact that they're sculpted into the model, it looks a little 2D to my eye.
Well, along that lines, I get the impression that he's trying to mark those as hot gold coursing in there.
Right.
And as we know, Victor's good at that. His tips on the horns here go to silver. So I wouldn't necessarily do it as white in those things, is your idea, but might go to the mithril silver to pick those up.
Vince is grinding his teeth at the notion of gold highlighted to silver, but yeah,
But
same principle.
Anyway, Vince, or rather Victor, we're giving you a bunch of ideas to try out if you want to. But, use your imagination. We're kind of just imagining on things to try to take that to another level.
Yeah, food for thought.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
The one thing I want to add here is pink crest doesn't quite balance out anywhere else. So maybe the tail tip, instead of going darker to the tail tip like Victor's done, he can come back into pink for that tail tip.
It's a good call.
Yeah, and there's a little on the base as well, but yeah, no, it needs a little bit more. You're right.
Good call. Okay. All right. So let's see. Why don't I take Chubby Sore's Zinch Knights? Jeff, I'm going to give you
John Cray's
John's piece here. Yeah. And then Kieran, you're getting Steve Wren's Alariel. So there you go. Prep up now. All right. So Zinch Knights. I know a thing or two about Chaos Knights of Zinch. I've seen my way around these guys. All right. So here's what I'll say, Chubby. These guys look good overall. Let's see if I can.
Oh, you guys are on a first name basis now, eh? You go by Chubby.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me pick out some things here. If you're gonna take the picture in the book, flip the book sideways, put the knights on it, make the book all of the photo. That's gonna help out there a lot, and probably diffuse that light somehow. That is to say, put something translucent in front of it. That's just photo taking stuff, not really anything to do with the models. Your conversions on the models are pretty great. We noticed these big arms and stuff like that, looking pretty fantastic, like tentacles and these other things. Very, very fun, cool stuff there. I like all of that a lot. You've got wonderful tones going on here with pinks mixed in and the dark browns and this striation in the bone. We've talked about bone striation so much on this show, and I won't belabor the point here, but it's good stuff. You did it. Very well done. So my thoughts are, one, we have the standard problem of our metallics are a little flat. I'd love to see that brought up. This is my constant journey in life, is to get more excitement into metals when they're painted. So I'd love to see some more highlighting, be it edge highlighting, some deeper shadows like here under this ridge on this horse. This eye plate is actually stuck out quite a bit. You can create a pretty nice shadow under there. Same with in between these ridges here, down below, all this kind of stuff under his armor plates, so on and so forth. And then my final note is black edge the base, and these bases need a little more going on. You've got these wonderfully, amazingly converted, beautiful figs with all this exciting action, which you did a great job with. I love all the rich pink tones and this weird, twisted Zinchian flesh. It's fantastic. And then I get to your base, and I'm like, oh, some sand, and I threw some static grass at it from 5 feet away. You can do better than that. You put so much effort into all this. Don't trip at the finish line. This can be better. So those are my thoughts. Any other thoughts there, gentlemen?
I think you nailed my thoughts.
Yeah, that's fair.
All righty. All right, John's. I think there's a sad story in the end of these photos, which we'll jump ahead to real quick. I believe, unfortunately, some things got taken out of there. Yeah, that sucks. But let's focus on happier things like the fig.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying that one of my buddies in my D&D group uses this figure. So it's cool to see it in another paint scheme, because I don't know what company produces it. I don't know if it's Reaper or whatever. I know it's metal. But it's cool to see it with a very different take on the color scheme that my buddy Jim painted up with. But I tend to like the color selection here. It's similar to Vince's Sylvaneth, where you have the pink and the light bluish aquamarine kind of color, teal. on another portion of the model. So I think that those two work really well as a pair, and the olive color and the red work really well as a pair. The four of them together, it can be a little bit it's a little bit strange to view. So when you're thinking about your color composition, you might think a little bit about how all of the different portions of the model are going to work together. But I do like the way that you've painted up the pink on the shawl. Can we skip to the second image to when we spin
Sure.
around?
Yep.
So here, I really appreciated how you painted the highlights on here. From the deep recesses, we see the purplish color, and you've highlighted up with pink. And I think we can really see the nice folds of that cloth. Same thing can be said about the flowing cape as well, of the cloak. We can see down at the bottom of that on the model that you go from a very dark recess to a light color. I think the thing I'd encourage you to do, if I'm going to challenge you moving forward, is to work on your skin tone a little bit. I'm not sure if you were going for something that was very, very like pale skinned, almost like an undead looking thing. My sense is that this is a human model, so I think you want a little bit more, pink and orange in your flesh. There, it looks kind of it looks really drab when you've got like basically gray skin here. So if you were going for something that looked very lifeless, then mission accomplished. But if you're trying to do something more human-like, you need a little bit more warmth in your skin. These look a little bit cold on the hands there. But overall, I think you've got a cool looking model that'll look nice on your D&D board.
Very good. I'll say one quick thing here with the red gem. Yeah, I think it is out of balance. It's too bright. It's too much just sitting in one place. It draws the eye and I can't look away. This is a great opportunity where you can use OSL to balance a fig, because you could have red cutting across here that would actually balance the fig, right? By throwing red down here on this side of his face and on this side of his shoulder and arm, and maybe even a little hitting this ridge here, just slightly, you'd actually bring the fig into balance by having the red cast down. It's an interesting time where you can use something like OSL to balance a fig.
Sure.
All right. Very good. Next up, Alariel. Da-da-da-da.
I feel like you guys are giving me all the epic models to have a look at.
Hey, it's just how life is breaking out, man.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's a happy problem to have. So for those that are looking upon this model right now and are seeing it for the first time, fancy, eh? Like this is an epic, huge thing with all kinds of exciting things going on. So the first thing that you're gonna view here is either the lady on top or the big spiky mandibles that come out of this beetle, both of which are handled really, really greatly. So the smoothness of the carapace and kitten of this beetle is really smooth as you go out into the tines of those reacher beetle spikes. There's probably a better technical term that an entomologist will tell us, but I don't know what that is. Either way, that's very smooth, even going all the way to the back of the beetle and down the legs of the beetle, all of that stuff. There's nothing that is sharp or chalky or out of place about that. So managing of paint moisture is something that I can tell Steve is very adept at, and he exhibits it all throughout here. Let's go look up top. Let's look at this lady. There's a frame where we get a good focus of her on the next one, I think. Yeah, so top-notch compliments for what Steve has done on the skin tone of Alariel here, and he purposely has left her eyes blank to give her that spectral "I'm casting a spell on you" kind of a look. The gold is very rich as well, and there's a little bit of gold that appears on the beetle, but most of it's up here on Alariel's headdress and scattered around. So he's done that really well. I think that maybe if I'm going to give you something to press ahead on, Steve, it would be go look back upon what we talked about with Victor's stuff about his gold, and get to the point where you have that gleam of bright highlight, and really make. You can afford to make a couple of exaggerated spots of going into something almost silvery, or as Vince prefers, as to go to white as the ultimate highlight on some gold edging. I think that will sell this through a little bit better. And then I have two tiny bits of mild critique, and that is if we back out and look at the beetle model for a sec. Everything is fantastic on here except for red mushrooms. I think that a more subtle answer to what those mushrooms colors look like, because you've got a very rich and organic and realistic model going throughout, and then you have cartoony mushrooms, which I think is a mild bit of detractor from the overall composition of this. So maybe a different choice there. And then the other thing that I would say, if we come back into L'Ariel, is her, I guess it's a spear. I want to call it a spear. It's fancier than that. But I think that might have been the color balance opportunity, because we have the darkness of the carapace of the beetle that only appears in the pool elsewhere on this model. And if you're traveling up from top to bottom, this might be a good place to have a dark color like that instead of the green, sort of deep emerald or jade that you're going with on there. The brushwork to get that green highlighted and show us the gleam of light contact can still be carried over into the darker side of things if you go back to that. But so there's my two critiques, I suppose, about this whole thing. But a wondrous model. Let's finish on the positive and the obvious, that this was a great undertaking, many great hours of effort, and you can be happy with it as is, of course, because we all are.
Absolutely.
For sure. I think one more compliment that I would give to Steve is that he's done something here that he did on a lot of his other Sylvaneth models, but this being like an elf god and a beetle, it's a little different from a tree. And yeah, I think that his use of clump foliage, like woodland scenics clump foliage on the base of the feet there, I think that looks really nice, and it ties it into the rest of his army, which we've seen in previous months.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good tips.
Agreed. Alrighty. So, Mickey with her base here. So I'll talk about the base. Let's see. Kieran, if you want to take Christopher Nelson's Tree Man, mm-hmm. And then Jeff will give you Kyle's Orc. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So, Mickey with this very diorama base here. So I like a lot of what's going on. It's very interesting to have. So here's my only thing that jives on this base for me, Mickey. Obviously, a lot of this looks great. Okay. Your ice effect. Let's go back to the ice effect so you can see here. Your ice effect looks fantastic. Snow looks good. All of that looks right. Stone is good. You've got a lot of natural green tones worked in. I guess where I'm running into a challenge here in my brain is when we come around to a shot like this, I have some very rich green moss and foliage and leaves, and then I have snow gathered on the rock. Now, if there's an ice sorceress on here and she's turning this natural scene suddenly into snow, then okay. But I really am going to need help to carry that out, because one of the challenges I have with this is if this is truly happening in winter, none of this is green. Like these leaves aren't green. Moss is like all of this has become very muted, very dead, very cold, right? This at the very minimum, certainly we don't have this back here or this green grass. This should be brown, desaturated of all color, right? Because in the winter, everything becomes brown and gray and dead. I mean, that's a winter scene. So there's a bit of a strange contrast here between the two, and I think that's where my brain has the issue when I look at it. Construction wise, I mean, you're great. The effect of like you're streaking on the stone, I want everybody to take note of this because it's such a small touch, but it's so good, is the effect of this where liquid has streaked down the stone and left behind, calcium deposits and such, is absolutely fantastic. This is great. Absolutely stellar. Like, I talk a lot about natural stonework and making it look realistic, and that's pretty wonderful. So yeah, your effects, the snow, all of that looks so good. I'm not sure about the combination of life and freezing here. So I'm going to need to see how that looks in the end to appraise it all together. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I would reflect the same thing. I think there's, you can go into some ochre browns and those kinds of things for foliage. Like the tree obviously is got some fairly big leaves for the size of the branches, but there's only a couple of them. But the green is too vibrant for it to be realistic. I agree.
Yeah, and carrying through that same critique that you guys are making there, I'm wondering why the water that's frozen in the middle of the snow is that color blue, and then in the pool we have this green color, and I'm not sure if that's actually iced on there, if that's water. If it's iced, then you'd need to use a slightly different technique, like Vince, you've done on some of your bases. It would look more like that.
Yeah.
So
I know she said this is going to be where the figure stands, so she didn't bother to paint or do anything with this. So I know the fig will cover this splotch up, but the distinction between here and here is noticeable. Yes.
Right. Okay. So I guess we could just pick a different portion of the model that doesn't look quite the same as the pool. So the question is that you have two water surfaces here, and they're very different in the way that you treated the blue.
Yep. Alrighty. But good stuff, Mickey. I look forward to the final submission very much. All right. Tree Man.
Yes, the big mighty tree man. Tree, which you obviously are familiar with lately. Vince for Vince.
Yes.
I've done one of these too. Good. So the color choices are very rich here. Like I don't know what color brand you're using, but the color of browns are actually a very rich brown. I especially like the one when we get a look at the back end of this guy in that mid-tone brown. To me is really nice. I really like that one. And I think that I'd like you to use more of that. So to delineate a lot of the sort of knotwork and striations that are going on through the bulk of this guy's bark, I think I'd like you to take that color back out and softly go in and use that as a highlight on the ridging and knotwork of the model throughout, like top to bottom, all the way through. You're obviously not going to do it as heavily as the ones that you wanted to bring attention to of the branches that are spurring out of there, but you can do some edge highlighting on a lot of that, and I think that'll be wonderful to make this look even more rich across the board throughout the whole model. So that's the one thing I think that I like, and I'd like you to extend a little bit further. You got a couple colors going on here. If we look at the snapshot of this guy from the front side, where we look at that tree tabard, or what is it, a woodsy loincloth? Is that in fashion these days? I don't know what to call that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's all the most fashionable tree men are wearing the woodsy loincloths. Yes.
The woodsy, the woven grasses. So you got a few colors of different tones in there, both muted and bright. So I like that. That really does a good job for me. So I'm happy about that action. And the balance of color works out fine here, because that and the leaves that are draping off of his wand would have been the only opportunities to do green on there, aside from a little bit of the framing down low. So choosing to do the face and the beard like that is actually pretty good. Let's get in there and give him a different gleam of color on his eyes, though, I think is the one extra thing I'd ask of you, to do something in there, because otherwise that eye and mouth are lost within a face that seems flat otherwise.
Yeah, I've got a quick thought on the green. because to me, when I zoom out, the green face stands out so very much, right? It's almost like I can't look away from it. Just to jump in. And I think this is a very simple solution. I'll give you my two solutions. Here you go. One, these claw tips are separate from the hand itself. Like I've painted 3 of these models in the last month. I feel very familiar with it. These claw upper talons could be this same green. And we could either take these tendrils coming out and turn them green, or conversely, we could add some leaves. Like just add some extra leaves, snip them off of the other parts of this model that you get, because there are other leaf packs and stuff you get with other heads and things like that. Glue them on here, put some extra sticks with leaves in here, paint those leaves green, and then all of a sudden, if you got some green here, now this model is going to feel like way more balanced, and I'm not going to be just like staring at his green head, unable to look away at the rest of the model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and although it's not my wheelhouse, I am going to say something about the basing here, and that is that for those of you that use cork, it's a very popular thing to do these days, and happens all over the place. But try not to make it look so. I'm trying to say this without feeling harsh about it, but it's a contrived looking plateau, purposely determined for this guy to stand his 2 feet on in this composition. Crumble that up a little bit more. Leave a couple of extra really tiny loose bits scattered around on the flat surfaces where these plateaus don't happen. Leave a couple lumps on top of the plateau so it looks like it isn't entirely a plateau, and fill that up with some other things. That's what I recommend, just for cork use as a basing material overall.
Yeah, this is something I myself have evolved a lot of thought on. Like the side where it's broken up of cork always looks good, but when you just leave cork and the top is flat, it looks like cork, like pure. So put some basing grit on top of it, go in there with your X-Acto knife and hack some chunks out of it, so you build up and build down, I think is what you're saying, right? That way you create some more natural variations.
Yeah,
I think that's then you'll be fine. But yes, if you leave it just flat, it's going to look.
Because you'll have extra bits of crumble. You'll have extra bits of cork crumble from tearing these things apart in the first place. So you can glue a couple of those on top there.
Yeah, in fact, when you hack the chunks out, just take the chunks you hacked out and glue them into other flat surfaces on here, and there you go, bing bang boom.
Yeah, and I also like the idea of adding a little bit of grit on there too. Just another basing material does a lot to add interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Good. All right, let's move on.
All right. The orc.
Yeah, so Kyle said to not hold back here. He wants harsh critiques because he's trying some new things here. He's returning to painting after a hiatus, and he wants us to point out everything we do differently because he wants to really continue to push himself. So I got a laundry list of stuff here that I'm just gonna.
Oh boy.
Well, not laundry. I got like 5 or 6. Usually I try to give 1 challenge, but I'm going to give you 5 or 6. But that's not to say that this isn't a cool looking model, because I think it is. So let me start with that compliment there. Critique number 1. You highlighted up the red and you went the pink route. I think with orcs, it tends to look better if you go the orange route. 2 ways to highlight up red. We've talked about that many times in the show, but I would steer you toward orange rather than pink, because it ends up looking, something like an elf would wear, less than something an orc would wear. Critique number 2, I'd put a little bit more depth in the recesses of your bone, be that the teeth or the fingernails. I think you want a much darker color, and you want those nice thin lines so that we really get to see that detail. If we look at the teeth here, it looks all basically like one big mass of bone, and you want to really focus on that. Another thing you could do is when you're highlighting up metal with the edge highlighting, you want to be a little bit sharper and neater with that. Like if we look at the casing for this gun here, some of your lines are a little bit sloppier. So you want to use the side of your brush and you just get a nice, clean little edge highlight. Let's see, 2 more things. The first one is your fur could use a little bit more depth, just like the teeth. So that could be achieved with a wash of say, Agrax Earthshade, or just a mixture of dark colors. something to really pull it down in the recesses. The last critique is your use of gloss varnish on the crystals. I think is really cool because I'm a huge gloss varnish fan. But I think you might have allowed the use of gloss varnish to stop you from feeling the need to highlight up the edges of the crystals. I think that it'd look a little bit better if you went with the nice sharp edge highlights on those really clean sharp points on the crystal all the way down the sides there of each of the bits of the surface, and then you go over that with the gloss varnish and you make it all shine and glow as you're trying to do here. But I think you don't want to use the gloss varnish as a replacement for the line highlighting that you want to do as a first step. So there's a long list of things that you might continue to improve upon, but that's just because you wanted the panel to give you as much feedback as possible. Overall, I think this is a cool looking model, and you're actually using it for AOS, which might raise some eyebrows depending on your opponent. But I think that it's cool that you're kind of doing your own thing and trying to push yourself with this orc. So keep at it.
I have no additional thoughts to add. You nailed all my thoughts.
Those are many things.
All right. Okay, so I did another tree man. Let's look at that. Here he is. There we go. Yep.
Anything special you want to share with the crowd about this one?
It's really hard to change the position of a tree man. They do not want to. They want to stand how they want to stand. Getting these legs to attach in different ways was a big giant pain. That's what I'll share with the crowd. But so yes, he's doing his little leap over that tree trunk into battle. I had an old metal Orion. If you remember the old metal Orion who had that big spear. So I buried the spear of Orion in his staff because I thought that'd be like he's Alariel's personal bodyguard tree man. So I thought it'd be fun that she gifted him with like Orion's actual old spear. Just a little fun thought there.
I recognize that piece.
Yep.
Yeah.
All in all, I'm happy enough with him. He's fine. Like there are things that I think I would do better, but I don't want to belabor the point too much. I painted a lot of tree men. We get it.
One thing I want to say really quickly, though, before we move on,
by all means,
is you've done something really interesting here, which is to convert the model to make it look different from your other treeman. But one of the subtle ways in which you've done that is just turning the base 90 degrees. So usually the treeman sits in an oblong, oval, but you've shifted it so it's pointing forward toward us. That means when you set up your army as a group, it's going to look very different from the other treemen just by the nature of the way you situated it on the base.
Mm-hmm.
Something to think about.
Yeah, and really my thought with doing that was I wanted him to have more forward motion, right? And so having long, thin coming towards you, communicates forward motion. Horizontal, long, flat communicates standing still, right?
Yeah.
So that was really I didn't think about differentiation at the time. I just thought like I want everything about this fig to say he's coming at you. That was my main thought.
Cool.
All right. Fun times. Okay. So let's see. I'll take Lee's. Oh boy, by the way, I bet in October we have a lot of this priest. Let me just say that.
Also.
So I'll take Lee's Slaughter Priest with Hackblade here. Jeff, if you want to take Sean Kavanaugh's Ash Wargs, and we'll get Kieran if you want the Hell Cannon. Sound good?
Yep.
Sounds great.
And then we'll quickly just touch on the other unit of Saurus Warriors. You do knocking out a lot of Saurus Warriors. All right, Lee. Let's take a look at this guy. Okay. So I think many of the things I've said previously are going to come into play here. And so when we talk about metals and stuff like that, it's good. You've got much more dirtiness to these guys' metals in a lot of places, which I like. You've got some sharper edge highlighting, which I like. The skin on this guy, pretty great. You've got some really, really, really great darker red and purplish tones within this guy's musculature. And this dude is muscly as all get out. Like, I love how ripped this guy looks. It's fantastic. And you captured that really well. As usual, the basing with your River of Blood is very fun. I enjoy that across this whole army. And I don't want to comment too much on the red because it could have more highlights than what we see in the picture here. I know you and I have talked in the past, Lee, about this, where you've had other previous corn models you submitted that were more highlighted than they look in the photos. So we'll go pass on that. So instead, I'm going to pick a very simple thing, which is this. Your white components here that you've got. One, we had a little bit of collection of wash here that pooled up a little. And two, this white here and here, this sort of bone feels too uniform. Like it feels like we hit it with the wash. Maybe we did a layer over it to smooth it out and kind of called it a day. When you've got a lot of white like this, you don't want to necessarily highlight up into pure white because you're trying to go for older and dirtier. So what you want to do is carefully work in some lighter browns in a smoother way. But the other way to do it is much the same advice I talked about earlier with Steve on weathering. One of the other tricks you can do to create visual interest and variation is we could have some dark pigment gathered at the bottom of this. Like this could be dark going, like we could take, here's how I would do it. I would take some pigment and I would splash it all the way up here. Then I would take some sepia and I would, like, if this was my line for pigment, then I would take some sepia and I'd run it from here down. And then I'd take some agrax and I'd hit the lowest edge. So it looked like this part had soaked through with dirt 10 times, this 5 times, this just got a little bit of dirt scattered on it as he ran through the wastes of chaos, right? As the dirt has soaked and traveled its way up and the capillary action of fabric has taken effect. So that's my thought for you there. Anything to add there, gentlemen?
Oh, not from my side.
No, nothing here either.
Alrighty. Moving on. The Ash Wargs from Sean Cavanaugh. His Chaos Hounds.
Yeah, so I'm going to steal a page out of Vince Venturella playbook here and compliment you on your tonal variation.
That's right. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I think that the way that you've moved from white to gray to black on the fur of these wolves looks really sharp. And it's sometimes hard to do that and make it look right, but you've managed it. I don't know if you used some pictures of wolves as reference for this, but I think that you applied it in a pretty cool way. You know, keeping the black along the backs of the creatures. So I think that looks really cool, and I also really like the blood effects, telling a really nasty story about these wolves going to town. What can I say by way of critique? I guess the thing to focus on would be possibly the bone. I think that you could highlight up the bone a little bit more on some of the sharpest edges there. It looks like you went for one color with a wash, and then maybe came back and did a layer of highlighting on some of the parts of it. But I think you could add a little bit of interest by taking it up one more notch as you get to the sharpest points of the bone on that little center champion guy. But that's just a little nitpicky thing. I think that overall these look really solid. You mentioned in your introduction that you wore out a dry brush trying to finish up this unit. You might need to invest in a brush that's made for dry brushing. I'm not sure what brush you're using there, but I know GW has a couple of pretty good dry brushes, nice cheap little guys that won't hurt your wallet too much when you wear them out. So something to think about moving forward. But overall, I think that these guys look really solid.
Yeah, the one thing that I would slide in here, I'm not usually a big super fan of blood and gore on models, but it actually feels realistic to me on this, is on some of the paws and the muzzles, he has just done some staining of blood, and it ends up visually looking a little bit pink. But against the white, I think that does feel more realistic, how it's kind of, as it's slipping away from the muzzle of the jaws, that you get it like that.
Yeah, so it's really concentrated at the jaw, and then other areas a little lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, many months back, we had a submission of a polar bear that had a bloody mouth, and that prompted me to go look on the internet for pictures of polar bears with bloody faces, which, by the way, there are hundreds and hundreds of photos of. Polar bears are vicious, vicious monsters that kill creatures all the time and eat them.
Oh,
they don't just sit around drinking Coke.
Yeah, I think Kieran's got one for a pet up in Canada, right?
Absolutely. And
in the garage.
Exactly. And I will say in my research of bloody polar bear muzzles, what you get is when blood hits light fur and soaks in, it turns pink. I mean, that's what happens. Those polar bears look like they were just covered in pink because as they dove headfirst into a seal or whatever. So you really nailed it here. I have two quick thoughts. One, you're going to really be sad about using part of the Mortark's mounts head on the base of this model sometime in the future when you want to use that. That's like that's one of the halves of the head of one of the Mortark's kitty cat dragon mounts. Because those things are just insanely ever useful. But I love how you did it as something to keep the base a little more interesting. I'd love to see a little something on a couple other guys' bases too. One could have a skull. One could have a little tuft of dead grass. Like just a little something like that to spice it up. You got the blood around there. Good. Let's see something else around that way. That's a small nit because I will tell you right now, Sean, overall, this is my favorite thing you've ever submitted. These wolves look so good. They look so organic and natural. The tonal variation on the fur is just top notch. These things are fantastic. I really mean that. Love it. That's my thoughts.
Good action.
All right. Cool. Hell Cannon.
Yes. So we looked at Chubbysaurus stuff earlier. And I think some of the things that Vince had said earlier about your blue metallic and all that kind of stuff. I won't talk about that again because we've already reviewed that. So same stuff there. Let's go back to that middle shot for a sec. So we just finished talking about blood and gore. Here's some, by the way. As this tells you the idea that this little chaos dwarf behind is just shoveling viscera into the back of this hell cannon and it's spitting it all out. So some of it's good here that it starts off bright red and as it soaks out into the sand, it gets a little bit lighter in pink. But I think that it's just too red. We've talked about in the past that that blood doesn't stay bright red for really that long, and it starts to turn brown. So if this thing has been sitting here and churning through the viscera for a while, there needs to be some darker bits in there. It needs to go crimson. It needs to get into brown a little bit, and that's most especially identifiable, I guess, on this little Chaos Dwarf shovel and pick. That it should be. You should bother to take the time to go in there if you want to really sell the realism of this viscera. If you're going to do it, then get that some darker stuff, and it should really only be red towards the edging a little bit in the freshest of places. So try that out. A couple of places that I think are good here is from this same shot, we get a look at the bone, and I kind of like the bone the way that you've done it, especially in the horns itself. The striation in those horns is really nicely visible through there. So I'm fine with that. It stays muted. It looks like it's old and it's been used, and that all makes me happy. I think the one thing that I want to challenge you on is if we can spin back around to the first frame where we look at the muzzle of this Chaos Cannon. Let's do something with the interior of that Chaos Cannon. Like the way that I kind of envision it and seen it done a bunch of times is this molten belching. This is a demon, is what the Chaos Cannon really truly is in its lore. So that should be you can go either fleshy inside there, even though it looks like a bunch of skulls. You could go fiery. I've seen it done that way as well. Or you could even just go bone, like you've done on the outside, on the inside of that barrel, because they are, either you can interpret them as either a collection of skulls, or you can collect or a collection of visceral leering faces. So take that whichever direction you want to go down. There's a couple of ideas, but do something with the interior barrel of that cannon, if you can. And if you spin around to the third shot, you can see that on the outside, it's got some metal bracing, that same kind of material. I guess it's a little bit out of focus in this shot, but it's the same stuff that's inside the interior barrel is on the exterior of the barrel. You can choose, I think, to do something similar to the exterior of that too. So that's what I got for you.
Agreed. All right. Okay. So let's take a quick look. Chris's 4th unit of sources. Much the same style. Oh, we got some interesting striping going on in this one. That's cool. I like that. We need to, if we're going to do the striping, we need to carry it through a little more, maybe a second wash or something like that to carry through that striping. Just a little bit more saturation. I understand you're trying to keep it light, but I would just go maybe a second time through.
Yeah, and then also on the shield, because you have the same kind of scale pattern there.
Yep.
Yeah, defining the scales is what needs to be done on all shields throughout most of the stuff.
Yep. All right.
Chris
Move
has been
on.
busy this month.
He has a lot of Saurus. Okay, so we've got 2 submissions here from the Angry Redbeard. We'll just take a look at this one because it's not actually what he painted. He's just saying this is where he's up to with his herd. So I'll take the Angry Redbeard standard bearer here. Then I'll just take a quick look at his assembled force, many of which we've reviewed in past months. Kieran, I'm going to give you Keith's.
Well, I'd rather pass that on to somebody else actually, because I've already told him all in person all I felt about his dude.
Oh, okay, all right, Jeff.
I'll take that one.
Keith's stuff. All right, very good. And then let's go, Kieran. Why don't you take John's grave digger here? Okay. Yes, I knew Keith was a friend of yours. That's the only reason I was giving it to you. Okay, very good. He's already gotten a personal session. Very good.
That's right. He has face to face.
All right. So, Angry Redbeard. Let's talk about it. Okay. So, what we've got here is a model done almost exclusively in browns. And that's what you wanted, I assume. You wanted something very natural, very whatever. Okay, I'm good with that. We can do that. We can work with all browns. But if we're going to do that, then we got to really vary those browns a lot to create some more interest in this model. The first thing I would say is let's return to that concept of black lining, the way that this axe is sort of, I understand this is actually one piece sitting against this banner, but we can create some hard shadows here with a black line around this axe to actually make it pop. By rusting it, we've actually made it sort of blend in. Like when I go back out to this shot, I'm not going to be able to see this axe anymore. With the browns of the leather and stuff like that, what I would look at is what we need to do here is lots of different tones of browns and lots of different variants within the browns. So with his fur, take it more up to almost white to a bone and tan, which you have, go farther. That'll pop that out more. With the leather, work in some darker spots, some scratches, some white scratches. So what we talked about earlier with the black line and then the white line, or actually you do it the other way around. You draw a thin white line and then you laying like just over the top of that and leaving a tiny bit of the white, you draw a thin black line. Do a bunch of those around the armor to simulate scratches and then wash the whole thing over with your browns again. And you can even purposely let it pool a little, not a lot, a little. There's an art to it to create some natural like burns and dark spots in the leather, and it feels very natural because leather, like naturally occurring untreated leather, has that. And then with the standard itself, everything I just said, but on 11, right? So with the standard, what you want to do to create more interest in that, work in other colors. I know you want this guy to be mostly brown, but that is a massive leather standard that has hit the ground like 50 times in the past month of combat. I don't care how tight a hold that guy has on that ridiculous thing. It's occasionally hitting the ground. So dirt, like it looks like you got a little bit of dark on the lowest parts of it. Work in more. Have some faded parts. Work in some greens where it's gotten water soaked into it and stuff like that. You could do all minimal. I'm not telling you to like take green paint and slap it around there. I'm saying use some Athonian camo shade, stuff like that. You can do little things like that to break up that brown and have each little thing then would have its own. Each different brown is going to then have its own thing going on to keep it interesting. So with the leather standard, you've got a lot of faded whites and dark dirt and pigment and, grab your like rust, grab your typhus corrosion. You can use that as dirt in a pinch. I've done that many times because it's got mass to it. It's got particulate in it. Put that at the bottom, have some faded spots that are more light up top. With the leather, you've got scratched, torn, beaten leather that's been struck by weapons many times. And then with the fur, you have these white tips where the light is shining through translucent fur. And in the end, you'd get much more variation across the thing. So there you go. That's my thought to help you out if you ever attack. One of the problems with the Beastmen is that they can end up a brown army. Like from a distance, they just look like a sea of brown. That's one of the ways you can help keep that interesting. Okay. Any thoughts there, gentlemen, before I move on?
No, not for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to echo the one quick thing that you said about differentiating and things getting lost there. That axe and the arm totally does get lost in against the backdrop there, and that's something you got to think about when you're composing the model and deciding where to put paint. I just want to echo the comment that you gave, Vince, because this bears repeating. That you really want to make sure that your model's most interesting portion, which is like an axe swinging up in the air, should really stand out on the model and not blend in.
Yeah, and I think that if you had a black line here and here, and then some silver swipes through the rust, like some actual scrapes through the rust where the rust is, because rust happens from the outside in, right? Like under this rust, there is real clean shining metal, right? So if I took a knife and went and hacked through that rust, what I would see is a dark black spot with a huge, incredibly reflective silver strike through the middle of this. A couple of like slashes through there where this thing has clashed with other weapons would suddenly make that axe pop right back out.
Definitely.
Okay, and let's look at the total herd. Yeah, good stuff. Clearly, they drink ginger ale. I like it. They're a fan of. Hey, they're a fan of your country. Yeah, exactly. There you go. There you go, Karen. That's from Canada, right?
I'm pretty sure it's not.
What? I've been lied to. All right.
Just like English coffee.
Yeah. But I mean, Canadian bacon is how you do bacon, right? I mean, that's not a lie. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably true.
All right. So I'm flipping through all of them just to show everybody what we've got here. But I'll start on this, and you tell me where you want to talk about.
Great. Yeah. So, really interesting band. Is this now? Someone tell me, is this Privateer Press or is this weird or what is this?
So this is all weird, yes.
Yeah, this is okay. It's a Malifaux crew.
Yep.
Yep. Part of one. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I've never seen these before. I've seen a lot of Malifaux guys, but never this group. But really,
this guy. Some of these are newer. This guy's like brand new. He just became available. The Shadow Emissary. Beautiful figure. That Chinese dragon.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks really cool. Well, there are little things I like on all of these models, and I'd like to point this out as we go through. So maybe we could go from back to front. So can you scroll to the dragon there? Yeah, let's go one more image back. One more image back. There's a good one right there. So what I really love about this model is that Keith, you've gone through and actually highlighted up every scale on this model with a few layers of paint. It looks like you used a line highlight method and not just a dry brush to do that. And I think the effort, the extra time that it took you really pays off here. I think blue and yellow as your two primary colors here are an excellent pair. Opposites on the they're close to opposites on the color wheel. Purple and yellow are the actual pair there, but blue and yellow are a really strong pair in my mind. One challenge for you here is to possibly think about highlighting up the flesh of the dragon, the underbelly, with maybe one more layer of highlight, and you wouldn't have to go every single fold. I think maybe just picking a couple choice sections, toward the center of each of those ridges, you highlight it up like maybe a 1/8 of an inch in actual terms in the model. Every couple of ridges you do that, and I think that would add a lot more depth to what is already a really nicely painted model. Can we skip back to that spider, Vince? Or Spider-Man, or whatever we're calling that thing?
That's Spider-Man. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So I really like the way that you've gone from a dark color, a black, to all the way up to an orange, by slowly blending up your colors there. I think that pays some serious dividends. And if we go back one more image, I think we can get a nice look at the flesh of the human. Yeah, if you can zoom in there, you can see Really nice orange highlighted up to almost a white in some areas. So I think that you could really see the definition to all those muscles, especially in the chest and the stomach, the abs of this model. And I also like the color choice for the halberd haft that you've got there. I think that the green highlighted up to almost like a minty green looks really cool, and it's a great contrast to the red. So again, that's a nice pairing of color that you've got there, the red and the green here, and on the last model, the blue and yellow. But let's skip to the collection of three, I don't even know what to call them, dancing
They're
maniacs?
called Obsidian Oni.
Yes.
Uh-huh. All right, could we go to, yeah, you could zoom in there. I think image number 4 actually might be best, Vince. And if you
Okay.
could zoom in on, yeah, there you go. So that's a good shot of the unit there. One thing I got to scold you for slightly here, Keith, is photographs. Take a page out of your friend Kieran's book and really invest some time in thinking about how to take a nice photograph with a nice clean backdrop. It's a lot easier to see your models that way. But from what I can, Kieran might
I
have
would
mentioned
assume
this
Kieran
before.
has already admonished him for that, so I'm good with it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
okay.
get Keith a light box.
There you go. Yeah. So I'll keep it brief here, but I again like the pairing of color, purple and green looks really cool, and I like what you've done with the bases as well. That cracked earth Martian feel, desert kind of feel looks really cool. One thing that I'd want to push on a little bit here is the way that you've highlighted up to white. That's okay that you've done that, but if it's me, I would highlight up to white much more sparingly. I think that you want to save, your white highlight for a nice thin last highlight on the model. So what you've done here, I'd probably have done the areas you did white here with a more like a violet color, and then the very tips of the hair, for example, or the knuckles or fingertips or what have you. Those would be just a little dot of white, but like the center model there, it looks to me as though you've used the white a little bit more than I probably would. So that's something to think about moving forward. But hey, if this is what you're into and you wanted to go for that effect, then I mean these are your toys. You do what you like. But overall, I think that the crew looks really cool. You've got a lot of different types of models there. They're not as cohesive as some of the Malifaux crews I've seen, but I think each of the individual groups are really technically sound. So good stuff.
Yeah, I would say this to some of it you touched on, but other things will give you a better perspective here. Is the jade color that appears at some point on all these models is something that Keith has carried over on all of his 10 Thunders crew members in some fashion where it's warranted. So gemstones are all done that way. He's used it on the tabards here for these guys, etc. The other thing that I commented to him directly about when we were talking about not just these models, but some other ones that he's done, is he has really latched onto that idea of highlighting all the way, and that's what gets it to white in a lot of cases. But in a couple places, it does appear a bit harsh, as you pointed out, Jeff. And but Keith doesn't use any glazes, which is what we talked about, and I recommended to him is that he take a look into doing glazing to just soften those transitions.
Sure. Yeah, that would totally do it.
Yeah. So I'm sure he'll take that on board.
All right.
He's a smart, intelligent guy.
Yes, indeed. And we look forward to more submissions from you in the future, Keith. Keep it coming, brother. Keep it coming. It's good to see you finally submitting. All right. So, John's Grave Digger.
Well, this one is a really good, soft, subtle use of this OSL. So we're going to spend most of our time talking about that. Maybe let's start on the thing to improve on. And you touched on it, Vince. I think when you talked about John doing metallics in the past, is this needs to sharpen delineation of the metallic stuff. So we see that on the lantern cowling as well as on the shovel down below. So that might take black ink wash to sharpen the edges and then get into the edge highlight with your brightest stuff. But we've talked about metallics enough that same thing applies, John. But let's talk about the greatness of this OSL. So starting right from the eyeballs of the little skull image on his lantern, and the way that it's cast down upon his cloak and up into his face, it's so very smoothly and subtly blended in there that I really am quite a big fan of that. Even carrying across to the nearest edge of the opposite fold of his cloak, going across the belt, properly coming down the lines of his cloak towards his feet as well. However, I think that there's two spots that's been missed, and I think that there would be a gleam of light coming off the nearest edge of that shovel, and that would probably be the furthest away that you'd go with that, the shovel spade head, and the toes of his boots that are sticking out from underneath the cloak itself. I think that would catch some of that light as well. But wonderful job otherwise. That's a great technique, and the color comes heaviest closest to it. Even though it's an armpit shadow area, it's a direct line and closest line from the light, so that's appropriately done. So I agree with you. Even in his comments, he said that he was proud of the fact that he did OSL pretty well, better than he's ever done before. And yeah, I'm on board with you, buddy. You did it. Looks great.
Good stuff.
Agreed. All right. So let's see here. So Chris Smith, I'll take his Malifaux models here. Let's see let's let Jeff, you get the Slaughter Priest with Hackblade this time. Okay. And Kieran, as a man who loves a good natural base, how about you take Bethany's
sure
bases?
Will do.
All right. So I know these boys well. I love this. This is right in my wheelhouse here in Neverborn, where I live in Malifaux. Interesting choice, as we've chosen to make them somewhat real. With the fleshy bits and then their ethereal sort of tendrils. I see these go both ways, and I don't mind this at all. Well, one thing I'm not going to admonish Chris for is going all the way on basing. Man, going to 11 here. These guys are coming out of the woods. I love it. This is fantastic. I think other people who are going to try to move up figs and attack might get somewhat. You're going to have to rotate them sometimes, but that's okay. Malifaux doesn't have facing, so you're good there. All in all, I like where this goes. I think where you need to work on, Chris, is very straightforward. It's very simple. Your ethereal, ghostly under parts there need to come up. We were just talking about highlighting up to white. Need to highlight all the way up to white because they're ghostly, they're ethereal. They need to have that bright inner glow, and that's going to mean some very subtle, soft whites on edges and things like that. So I feel like that needs to happen to really make that energy pop. Similarly, with the flesh bits, I want to see deeper shadows. So much the same thing. One other little small note for you. Malifaux models are finicky and tiny and a pain to put together. Lord, I know. But with these models, I shouldn't see lines like this as clearly, where I can see where his arm is connected to the body here. Like, this can be corrected. Even if you just took glue, a little bit of extra glue, and ran it on there and made sure that covered it. Alternatively, after you prime it, fill it with matte varnish. Just drip a bunch of matte varnish in there over the whole area and just let it settle. It will minimize it. It won't get rid of it completely, but it'll certainly minimize it and make it less an obscene, obvious break in the model. Because nothing's going to destroy the illusion of a model faster than a real hard line where I can see where I glued the two pieces together. So all in all, love it. A+ basing, great color choices, very fun stuff, very spooky woods. I like it. Other thoughts?
Nope, you said what I would have.
All right.
Yep. Serial spectralness.
Indeed.
Ramp up.
Slaughter Priest with Hackblade, take it away.
All right, Marty. So I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to do one more with you guys, and then I have to nod out. But
okay.
Marty's submitted here for the first time. He's been watching the PmP. He's been watching the PmP long enough to know that we gave some advice about how to take photographs inside a book to give a little nice background. So he's been with us for a while, but this is the first time he's posted in the end of month submit. And I'm really glad to have him because it looks like he's someone who's taken painting really seriously. I think he's produced a really cool looking corn model here. Marty, my favorite part about what you've done is the way that you've highlighted this corn armor. I love that you go from the dark brownish color all the way up to a nice vibrant red, and then you cap it off with a nice orange in the sharpest extremities. One other thing that I really admire about the way that you've done this model is the way you've painted that left arm. Vince, can we skip ahead a couple? I think it's number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there we can see him going all the way from his, normal orangey flesh color, and he's blending it up, or maybe possibly washing down with reds and purples to make this like really painful looking, tense grip on this bicep here. I think that's a pretty cool approach to take to a corn model. He's so enraged and vicious that the blood's flowing to his arm as he's swinging around this mace. I think that's a really cool way to create that kind of effect. But I want to compare that portion of the model that I think you did an excellent job on with another portion of the model where we don't see nearly as much variation. So can we?
I already know where you're going. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, you head there. There we go. Yep. So the white cloth. There, I think you really only ever want to use white on a cloth area like that that has folds on the sharpest.
I'll jump in real quick here.
Yeah.
He actually, we gave him this feedback right away, and I think he has another photo later where he's done some more work on this and dirtied it up.
Well, I won't go into too much detail there, but yeah, dirtying it up because it's a corn model and he's running around in the desert, it looks like, and it would not be nearly that clean. And also, even if it were that clean, the way that you've progressed up with your color there doesn't quite make sense for the surface. But overall, really cool first submission. I'm really excited to see what you come up with in future months, Marty.
Oh, did we lose Jeff again?
No way. Can you guys not hear me?
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, I might have muted. But cool first submit, Marty. I'd like to see more in the future.
Absolutely agreed. Welcome, buddy. We're glad to have you. And yes, I know, and I love he's absolutely focusing on doing that because I see, like I said, I think he posted another picture right away. Took the advice. He was all over it. All right. We are coming to the end anyways. We're up on the 28th. So, all right, Bethany Graham's bases.
Okay, well, bases, important part of the model. We've always talked about that. It's at least 25% of your efforts. So Bethany putting effort into this is going to pay off for her end product for sure. We have said a number of times about how stone, even by itself, is never tidy, especially when it's got this much foliage around it. So she certainly appreciated that there needs to be green washes in there, which she's thrown around pretty liberally in a lot of places. That's the big positive. Lots of different blends of textures on there. So we have some light brown tufts, some bright green ones, some lichen, etc., and some exposed stone. So wonderful stuff. Good variation throughout, and even a couple of wet spots on that one in the upper right to put in there. So I guess to build up on this one, what I would say is I think the second one from right on the very top, the one that has sort of fanning out flagstones, I think those ones in particular, being that they're as big as flagstones as they are, need some edge highlight on the stones themselves. So I think that's where I'd go first with a bit of critiquing. And then the other thing that I like to think about is on these two that are in the center, for example, with all that green expanse, and the one just to the left of it as well, where you have predominantly green expanse. If we can't take a little bit of brush highlight to that, like there's a bit of roughness to that texture, so you could do that. And I think I like Vince's idea from earlier, where if you take a drop of Agrax or some kind of brown and plop it in the middle of that static grass tuft, then that will actually add a lot of variance to this too, that I think will be valuable. But aside from that, if we go back over to the two ones on the right, where we have the dark muddy stone that's exposed in a couple of places, I think those need a little bit of extra color as another level on there too. So I guess overall what I'm saying, Bethany, is good stuff. You've put a lot of thought into the composition of these and the variety of textures that you've added on there. And it really only is probably less than 10 minutes away from being wonderful stuff instead of just good stuff.
Agreed. Yeah, and it looks like we got a drop of it here in this tuft.
Yeah.
So I just say carry that through.
Yeah, plopping on a couple others. Yeah, just a couple little extra bits is all.
Yep. Okay. We got one more from you, Jeff?
Yeah, let's hit me with one more.
All right. So
Well,
you are...
I'm gonna... What do you want to talk about, Jeff?
Yeah.
I get to pick?
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you pick.
Oh, let's go with Rory, because I've been painting some night goblins lately, and
I was going to give you the night goblins because I knew that's where your heart would be. See, I know you.
Because they have green shields, Jeff?
No, he's been doing old school goblins. This is right up Jeff's alley.
Yeah, I'm gonna post in next month's PmP with some real ridiculous night goblins painted in the 1996 style. So get excited, crew.
I love it. So I'll take Rory's. Kieran, if you want to take Merrick's Witch Hunter, and then I'll take Bruce Lim's Fire Slayers. Sound good?
Got it.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Kick us off.
Yeah. So I love night goblins, and I can't wait for MoonClan Grotz to get their own book in Age of Sigmar. I think it's going to be so much fun to read that fluff. But anyhow, I really like what you've done here with these Grotz. Nice looking red combined with a minty green. That's a great strong color scheme. And what I really like about these is that you've taken what tends to be a really bland looking, dark looking unit of night goblins, and you've really brightened them up. Rather than using black on the cloak, you've done a nice maroon color, and you've highlighted it up with some pink. And I think that makes it, really stand out on the tabletop next to some other MoonClan God armies that might be a little more drab. What else do I like? I really like the way that you've highlighted up the shields. So we can see that guy's second from the right in the front rank. You can really see the nice highlights on the sharp edges there. You've gone for adding like a white to it to make it more of like a minty green. And I think that's a good choice here, given that you made the same choice on the maroon cloaks. Because if you'd gone with orange on the maroon cloak, I think you'd want to go with yellow as the highlight on the shield to go from green to a lighter color. So I think that's a good, consistent way of highlighting your models. Why don't we skip through a couple more here? And I've got one critique that I want to give to Rory, but I want to make sure we take a look at all these little guys. Yeah, nice looking mushrooms. Now, one thing you could do on those mushrooms, this is a little side note, is I like painting little dots on the mushrooms to create like kind of like a Mario Bros feel. Actually, Steve Wren did it on his submission for this month. You could look back at those pictures and see what we're talking about. But nice little white dots tend to make them look a little bit more like disgusting magical fungus that they are. But my big critique for you is one that we give a few quite often on the PmP, but it's about basing. I really think you need to both clean up your bases a little more. Now that's really easily done with a nice clean coat of black around the lip of the bases. That'll take you a couple minutes to do the entire unit, maybe 5-10. But the other thing you could do with the basing is adding some sort of interest. If you want to make these guys be walking around in some kind of desert, which is the color scheme you've chosen already, well, you might still have a tuft with like a desiccated little crop of grass, or you might have a little other pieces of stone that have different colors, something to add a little bit more interest. Because when I look at these models as a unit and I see them on this very flat basing, it seems like a missed opportunity. So that's something you might consider as you move forward. But overall, I think you've done a cool job with these Grotz, and I want to see more of them moving forward.
You nailed what I was going to talk about.
Fun models.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, good luck with the last 8 or 10 submissions, and sorry for the technical difficulties earlier. But I'll have to listen back to the rest of the show to see what you guys say about the next few submissions.
Not a
We just
problem.
talked. We just talked crap about you.
Exactly.
Oh, come on. At least wait till after the show.
Thanks, Jeff.
Gents, I'll see you real soon. Thank you. Bye, guys.
All right, so here we've got the Witch Hunter captain from Merrick, along with his hunting hounds. So I like this guy. He's pretty great. What do you got there? Wait, you're taking this one, right, Kieran?
Yeah, let's talk about wolves first.
Yes.
Because Merrick Wolf is the wolf guy.
Yes.
I don't think anyone's going to wrestle that title from him. He's kind of done a little bit of the opposite of what we saw out of Sean a little bit earlier. He's gone heavier black on the top side of these guys, but yet still capture the essence of a wolf. I think on that top side, what I would like is I'm gonna qualify this critique with the point that it clearly seems like there's a little bit of overflash of the photography here, but I think the transition and the shift between the white through to the black could use with another softer blend in a couple of places, and maybe a little bit more feature definition on the faces themselves on the top side where the black is. So that needs just a mid-tone to sharpen that up a little bit from this shot, and I think we see it well with the next shot of the guy in behind. I think you'll see what I'm talking about. One snapshot back where it's got the wolf coming around the corner, those two wolves coming around the corner, the ones that are in focus. I think it just needs something else to give a little bit more definition to the facial features on that wolf. Maybe is my one ad. But nobody's going to argue. You understand what wolves look like, so you're capturing the essence without question. Okay, then the rest of the shots kind of focus in on this witch hunter itself, and obviously we're going to talk about basing, and Marek is good at this. All of his stonework, he's been doing tons of it, so obviously he's going to get good at it with all of his Mordheim terrain and tile work, carrying it over to the bases and getting all those organic textures in there, browns and green washes ever present. When we look at the crossbow here, I think that I want to give you a little bit of a challenge, just like you've done on the leathers of this guy. So leather robes, leather hats, you've gone from a deep, rich brown into the ochre and yellow range here for the highlights and the lip of the rim of the hat. Take a brush and go in and give me some wood texture on the places that you can there. I think that'll add some extra richness of character, because that's the one part of this that in the brown range anyway looks just a little bit flat, because it's just got a sharp edge highlight on the top edge and not much more than that. So I'm challenging you, Marek. So that's what I'd like you to add there. And then as we go ahead through the next couple snapshots, these are a few shots that the camera was having a little bit of trouble, but I think what Marek's trying to do here is he's trying to show off and show us that he actually managed to get a paintbrush in between that guy's hat brim and the cowl and get in and do some facial features. Although I think it was a little tough to get the camera to focus in there, even if you did get a brush in. So tough to give you critique about that, but I'm going to interpret this as you just trying to show off and show us that you got into a terribly tight space with your brushes and managed to get some color on. So there we go.
Very good. Great scene as well. Really recreating the narrative for putting this piece in here for the pictures. It's pretty awesome. Stalking through the streets here. Love it. Yeah. All right. So Bruce Lim with his Fire Slayers. Oh, that is a tiny picture. Okay. I am not going to be able to give you much in the way of critique on that, Bruce, because it is very, very small.
Let me slip in here. We actually had a bit of exchange in the text underneath here.
Okay.
Gave him some critique about that, and it was really just about, saying there's obviously some quality there in the models that he's taken, but he's let down by two things. One being the photo size, because I actually looked at the picture size, and it's only like 320 by 240 pixels.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than a thumbnail. Yeah.
So that's all you really get out of it. And the other thing that I mentioned to him is you got to get a neutral backdrop to photograph against for us to really see the sharpness of that. So I'm sure that we'll see great stuff out of Bruce in the future, because if you really spend time and isolate against there, you see there's good quality. But we'll see more at a future better Photoshop, I think.
Absolutely. I will say I like what I can see from a distance. Looks like there's some fun turquoise in there and some reds and stuff. Looks like fun work on the burnt tips of the mohawk. So looks like there's cool things going on. We'll see. So I'll see when we get some bigger pictures and stuff. We'll look in the future. I'm excited. All right. So I did a tank. Here you go. We'll just look at it quickly. That's the old Empire steam tank. It has been converted, obviously. And I want to take a moment to talk about painting dirty. So this thing is the dirtiest model I've ever painted. And it is very weathered. And I think organically, I certainly tried to make it look so. Painting dirty is a lot, and making it look realistic is a lot harder than painting clean. Because when you do dirt, you have to do a lot of different variation, and it has to be organic in how it applies. So to draw everyone's attention to a few different things, the tip of the barrel, I mentioned that earlier with the charring from the cannon fire. Let's find that shot. You can see how blacked out that is. That's like actual physical pigment added on there. When we look at the rust and the rust technique, so this is both chipping and salt. I did a video on this, so if you want to see how I did this, you can go watch one of my most recent hobby cheating videos. And everything on here needs to look aged, right? So the color of the red sort of banner here, or whatever this is highly desaturated with dirt on the bottom. The leather itself is incredibly worn and cracked with these, lighter colored edges. There's like probably 4 or 5 different tones of dirt and pigment that's shoved up near the bottom of the tank where it would collect down in recesses and along the front. The wood grain itself, all these kinds of things. Like painting dirty, you've got to think about each individual element of it. How would water run over it? How would it streak? How would it collect? You can see like the rain streaks coming down. All of these things have to be considered. And I'm not great at this sort of weathering. Like this is my best I've ever done with it. But certainly I am far from a master of it. But my point is that painting dirty and making it look realistic takes a lot of consideration. The little angel up here and the worn, let's see if we can, oops, there we go. The where the paint has chipped, but you can still see how the original angel was cherub or whatever was painted with the writing and stuff like that. Like each little individual piece you got to think about.
And you want to tell people about your clump foliage smoke?
Well? Oh yeah, sure. So a couple people have asked me about the smoke. What is the smoke? The smoke is clump foliage that I've taken off of like little trees I have, and oh boy. Okay, so you prime the whole. You put in a small little bit of super glue, little super glue soak in to once you shape it and you shape it, super glue it, it dries, it's stiff. Prime the whole thing black. Zenithal highlight it. You paint the lower tip white so it can take a lighter color. Then you go with an orange. Then you go with a whole red. Then you use black pigment or black wash to knock the whole thing together. Then you go back with a light dry brush of like a light gray over the top. There you go. And you get smoke.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's a good way to create that.
Well, there you go. All right, so fun stuff. Making things look dirty is terrible. This took forever. Good Lord. Never again. No, it's fine. Okay, so now actually finishing up here, I'll take Jacob's converted ghouls because I'm in love with them. And if you want to take James Dragon Ogres, sound good?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. As I said, I'm in love with these guys. I'm in love with everything about this, the display of it, they're coming in this like wonderful highlighted text. Dear God, Jacob, I love what you've done here. The basing on this is fantastic. All the different sized rocks. We got a tombstone, like this broken column. I mean, this is just excellent. And what a wonderful use for these turning them into ghouls. Again, we see the blood spatter. He's honestly been fairly controlled about blood spatter. Certainly the ghouls are gonna, if anybody's gonna have it, the ghouls are. Wonderful tone and texture on the flesh. He is coming up to sort of an ashy gray, but there's still like some light dead flesh tones in there. We've got some good highlighting on the gold. Yeah, I really do like most everything that's going on here. If I was going to say anything, what I would say is, I mean, you, I'm sure, Jacob, given what you've displayed here, know what you could do to come to the next level, which is to say we could blend some more smooth transition of purples in at the muscle ridges here and in these kinds of areas. We could work a little bit more colors and dirt into the base on the here. So like around these rocks, instead of just kind of sticking the rock down, we could have some dirt and some mud and grit with some little tufts of dead shriveled plants. Little tiny things like that. On the whole, this is just fantastic display and really great use of these guys. Any thoughts?
Yeah, the extra thing that I would add about composition of the whole thing is cork plateaus again. Are a mild bit of a detraction to this from what otherwise a super characterful mix of everything else going on. So yeah, go back in, add a little bit extra on top of those plateaus. I think is the answer to round this out to become an epically good.
Agreed. Okay. James Wilson's Dragon Ogres.
Yeah, speaking of epically good, these things are great. James is already a fairly accomplished painter, I would say. And when we look at these guys overall, the character oozes out of these models. They're such a good treat to do. So let's look at a couple things. First of all, what I think is a cool subtle thing is a lot of folks would paint these guys with horn protrusions, but he's actually done them as extensions of flesh, which are like under flesh protrusions for their horn areas. And because it's not a hard delineation when it's sculpted on the model, it's actually doable that way. So that's kind of a cool thing. All of his armor plating and everything else about his painting is very clean and tidy. I think we can touch on a couple things that we touched on earlier, where there's a few points in the armor, especially when we see in this frame here, where there's gashes in the armor and there's some weathering and some battle-worn spaces. That's where you could go in with your sharpest highlight, and again on the underside, give us a hard reflection of there. I think that would be wonderful. And a couple other places on the armor where I think you can lavish a little bit of a sharper highlight on, and some places of that. Shoulder plat especially, the framework that's holding the hammer together. That would be another place that I would hit up a little bit extra. The other thing that I think could use a bit of a color choice delineation is the claws themselves. The claws, I think, look like an extension of the skin and the scale. However, I don't think that they are like that. Like unlike the horns that can be an extension of the flesh, I don't think that those claws quite look like that. So I think I'd have you go to a lighter color there so it doesn't look so samey. Spin around to the next frame, because this is the thing that I'm most excited about, yet I wish that I had another photo of this, James. And that is that up the back of these guys, after he has done a good job of doing the light flesh throughout, he has blended it in to transition from green into flesh, and so very smoothly. It's wonderful, right? And I think that's masterful. And I really would like to see, if you're willing to submit us another shot, another straight from the back shot of that, because I really like to get a closer look at that. I think that's wonderful stuff. It's masterful stuff. But while we're here, one last piece of critique that I want to add is on the scales. I think that they all could use one other layer of highlight in there. I think the delineation between the scale is fine, When you get into the transition into the more muscular stuff that still shows some scale, I think that's fine because you're following the edge of the muscle, but it's still scaly. So I think maybe bring a similar color up from down there in the lower part onto these hard scales, and that will sharpen that up. And then whilst you're in there, once again, the same thing with the spines, the spine spikes that come out the back, as I said about the claws. I think that needs to be a brighter color so that it distinctively becomes something different than the other scales. There you go. And a thumbs up on base. Basing looks good too. It doesn't have plateaus. It has some cracks and extra detritus on there. So you got away from doing plateaued cork, which is something we like.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, James.
All righty. Let's see. Okay. Do you want to take Skeleton Flowers, fun little chibi figs, and I will take Alexander's Barbarians.
Yeah, we'll do.
Reavers.
Okay. When you see the first snapshot of this thing, the way that the photography is taking and Skeleton Flowers style, you almost think that if you quickly glance at it, it's a 2D picture. Like you think it's just a 2D drawing. But that's what's wonderful about this is his painting style is such that that it can actually give you that illusion. And the only way that, like, if this didn't have bases on it, you probably would think it's just like a 2D drawing, because of the way that this guy paints and highlights and really exaggerates transition between color. We haven't seen something for a couple of months from him, but it's always a treat when we do. This guy's, I call this the Skeleton Flower style even. I don't have another way to describe it. But yeah, super fun guys. I'll say the same thing. His color transition. This guy goes from dark to highlight in a smooth and dramatic way, but not what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't feel too stark because there is actually a lot of layers of transition. It's such a tiny millimeter of space on these things that I really look forward to seeing his stuff every time.
Agreed. Chibi and Skeleton Flower were meant to go together. Like it looks like this one is actually mugging for the camera, by the way, whereas his brother here is very serious about this whole affair. So this is fantastic, Skeleton. I definitely want to see more. Oh, that looks even better. It looks like they're literally looking at each other and he's like, "What did you do?" And he's like, "Hey, it's all good, man." They're so characterful. I love these guys.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Skeleton, I need to see more. I agree. Great example of your style. I really don't have much feedback. You've nailed the chibi style. Looks wonderful. And such very small models too. Those are very tiny.
Oh yeah, those are thumbnail sized.
Yeah.
Virtually.
All right, Alexander, with a couple Blood Reavers. Yeah, so these guys look good. Very clean paint job. Very obviously, you got good control over thinning your paints. Very smooth. I like that. Nice and clean. You have great brush control, and that comes through here, because everything is very well delineated. You got some nice depth and such. Your skin color here, to zoom way in, is fantastic. We've even got a little bit of variation between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Great lower shadow colors. Here's an example of the thing we talked about way back at the beginning of adding the purple or pinkish tones to highlight scars and stuff like that. Wonderfully done here. Absolutely great. I think what I'd like to see, if I had any feedback for you, it would be this. Your browns are boring. That is to say, these pants and this bracer here, there's no visual interest going on. Your skin has all these wonderful tones mixed into it. Your bone has all this nice shading and highlighting going on. And then I get to your brown and it's just like paint, right? It just destroys the illusion for me. What I'd love to see is, again, here, you could go lots of different ways. We could highlight it. We could do some cross-hatched highlighting. So we just take like a bunch of lighter color and go all the way down and then wash it, or glaze it or whatnot. That could be a fun way to go. We could do some scratches and damages. We could do some traditional layer highlighting. All of that is fully possible. You go whatever direction you think best suits you. but I just love to see a little more tonal variation in the brown. It is a bit flat.
Yeah, I agree.
Final small note, as Kieran and I have pointed out many times, when you've got little threads here, got to pick those out. Those threads should be like white compared to brown. Always contrast your threads against the thing. That's easy contrast for your miniature. Okie dokie. Let's see, where are we at here? I'm just trying to figure out what's still at the end of the month. Still the 30th. Okay, so up to
Stone got a handful to go.
Yeah, Stone Monk is the last one. Okay, so why don't I take Jace's here, and why don't you take the Luke Snell's Weird Knob? Sound good?
Sounds dirty, but okay.
All right. So I think he said this was his first try with kind of working with an airbrush and messing around with that. So what I'll say is good. I can tell that. I can tell you were working some with an airbrush here. So let me back out here. Yeah, Gersto with a basic airbrush. Okay. He says he could have taken it up a few levels. He knows that. All right. So let's talk about the dragon, and then we'll talk about the tallyman. So one of the keys with the airbrush is when you make huge jumps like this from red to white, you're going to get this effect that makes it look obviously airbrushed. It can be good, but it can also be bad. So the key is when you do this, go back in with your brush and glaze in between the two of these, and that will destroy the airbrush look. That's one thing to do. As you start playing with your airbrush, understand that it is just another tool, just like dry brushing and washing and layering and glazing and filtering and tinting and everything else. It's just one more method of painting in that full rotation, and you can mix it and match it appropriately. So for example, the back of this guy looks a little flat. Okay. So there's no reason we couldn't dry brush. We couldn't base coat it red, pick out with a fairly stark dry brush on his back to get the scales, go back with the airbrush, zip over it with a thin down glaze, and bing, bang, boom, we're good to go. Okay. So, use it in tandem with your other tools is what I will say. As to the tallyman and their gross nurgliness, again, it looks good. You've certainly nailed their gross, disgusting nature here. Fairly classic with the green and red. I like the weird slime on your base. I think that looks nice. I'd like to see the rocks a little less flat gray and a little more mixed up with some different colors. Let's knock some washes into those rocks. Get some green and browns and stuff like that on there. Certainly, anything Nurgle has touched should be teeming with weird, gross, disgusting life. So I think that would be a fun next step for you. But overall, very cool submissions. I look forward to seeing more from you. Let's have you play around with that airbrush more. You'll love it. It's a great tool. It's like the first time discovering the airbrush was like the first time I discovered washes existed back in the 90s, that you could do a wash with inks. And I was like, oh my God, my life has changed.
Gonna get easier.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, looking at Luke's business here, very clear by the painting style of this guy that he has a good mastery of the brush already, as far as control of paint texture and positioning of it. One thing that I thought was cool that I'll draw your attention to in this frame is up in his smoky, billowy, mystical cloud up there. At first glance, I thought, oh, well, that's not quite like fire, but obviously he's doing something more mystical than that. He's even painted on little swirls into the darker areas. You can see those. Yeah, just hand painted those on and given some striation in there. So I think that's a good touch that adds to the mysticism of this weird knob here. Throughout the rest of it, I mean, as I said a moment ago, brush positioning, control of paint and smoothness is there. There's no chalkiness to this guy's paint style, so I'll commend you for all of that. Color balance is fine. On his tabard and cloak has been carried over onto some teeth and wrappings on the staff that he's waving around, so that's in balance. The middle of the green face is framed with his other robes, I guess, or cloak that he's draped over in the bone color. And speaking of his bone color, actually, that's a style that I kind of like as well, where rather than going into browns on this because he has a lot of those warmer colors elsewhere. He stayed through it sort of to a cold skull and bone color here. And I think I like that. So the two bits of critique that I would add here is that within the face, there's more character there and color transition between the deepest recesses of green to the highlights of green than there is, let's say, on the feet and the hands. And if you skip ahead a frame, I think that we see this a little bit more obviously. Yeah, so looking at his feet and his hands compared to the face, there's just not the color wash or whatever deepest green that you had started out with didn't stick there. So that needs to recover just a little bit. And similarly, I think that on the tabard as well, and I'm talking about the grayish blue stuff that's on the lower half, I think similarly in the deepest folds of those things too, I think it feels like it should be darker. And there's a couple of the other frames exhibit that a little bit better. And then the one other thing that I want to throw out at you as a thing to try, Luke, is do a little bit more depth in the wood. There's two spots actually that could maybe use a little bit more. And that is at first glance to the horns that are hanging down. There's some texture in those horns closer to the top that don't have as much color depth to them or highlight to them. So that needs another subtle highlight. And then over on the shaft of the staff, I think that can transition a little bit more as well. Clearly you got it in you. I mean, you've done it on the skull, you've done it on the skin and a few other places. You got it in you to do that. So that wood staff just feels undone or done to a less level of attention than the rest of the model. So yeah, so let's come back and finish on the positives. So the character that you brought out in this model is spot on, even to the googly surprised eyes that they feel appropriate for what's coming out of this guy's staff, as if, did I do that, or the tantric position that this guy's in. It matches up real nicely. So there we go. That's what I got.
Very good. I agree. I think if I was going to add one little minor note, I'd love to see this orange of the spell carried down to maybe his eyes, or maybe the eyes and the skull, or both. Right? That way it kind of looks like magic here, magic here, magic here. Right? Like it's the spell cast. It's a little touch like that I think could kind of increase the narrative of the piece. But overall, very cool. Okay. Why don't I take Captain Rex's Mighty Lord of Corn? And you can take Justin's Salamander. Sound good?
Yes.
All right. So, Rex, I'm going to assume the base isn't done, because if it is, we need to get that base done. That's not a done base. That's a brown base. So I'm going to ignore that. As far as photos go, I don't have a huge amount to say because it's a little fuzzed, and we don't have the best photo conditions. But here's what I'll say. I like the choice of white bone armor. I've seen a couple people do this Lord of Corn in that method, and I like that quite a bit. I think it actually looks rather good. The trick is when you start painting in cream bone colors, now you're in a tough space because your highlight has to go up to something much nearer white, and your lowlights are going to be very strange because white doesn't necessarily turn brown in shadow. It turns gray in shadow. It starts to desaturate, which means more gray gets added. So it's actually quite tough to shadow it properly, because if you just splash around brown, that's not actually how ivory gets darker in color, not primarily at least. So I think what I would say here to this is, one, I want to see some more photos in the future. Two, I want to see it finished all the way with like the pile of bones and the base and stuff done. And three, my challenge to you would be to work on a little bit of your variation around stuff, like the top of the flesh hound on his scales, and working in some more shadows into the armor. I think there you could make some real progress. It's just subtle. You can just take a little of the ivory or whatever color you're using and just mix in a little darker gray color, just very, 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 very small amount. Okay, picture the amount in your head, half that. Now you've got the right amount. And you can kind of work in a little bit of shadows, and I think you'd really see it pop. Yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts. Anything else?
No, that seems good.
Okay.
We're gonna move on.
Salamander.
You say a salamander, but look cllosely at this. Have
Oh,
you just
also
seen
a flesh hound. Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a brilliant use, hey? So this is the same model you just looked at, people.
Yep.
But reconstituted as a salamander. So he's added a couple of lizardmen jewelry bits on there to tie it in. Put a different crest on the top of the head that's part of a temple guard, I think. That's where that bit is from. And that's all it took. Like, isn't that amazing? It just took
It's
that
great.
to change this into a salamander. So I think that's a fantastic idea. Really came together nicely. And this is fully, completely based with all kinds of aquarium foliage and exciting things like that you'd like to see. And the orange is obviously a good thematic choice for these guys because they are fire spitters. So you'd expect that. Going through the transitions of orange into yellow, for the most part, are really good. There's only a couple of spots here where I think it's just a mild bit too much, and that is right around the muzzle. I think that something about it just looks a little bit too sharp. So it's not a matter of I'm not saying you shouldn't go to yellow there. I'm just saying that it feels a bit sharp. It doesn't feel as smooth as it might need to be, because it ends up looking a little bit unnatural. And the bridge of the nose as well, like right on the top side of the nose.
Yep. I think a couple thin glazes of your orange or your yellow color could tie that a lot of that together. Yep.
Yeah. So it just needs to back off in those two little bits, those two spaces. But down the spine of this guy, as well as other little scales on the back, that's appropriate. That's all good. That's the right amount. Yeah, a pretty solid creative idea and paint job, aside from that one little niggly bit that I would say.
Yep. We've got to get the model on a normal angle. I don't know, Justin, if you're trying to go as an indie director here and just shooting in Dutch angles, but like my head is turning left and right. Let's flatten that guy out when we take some pictures. It's tough to get it. You got to really turn it around and figure out what the right angle is on here. I didn't have one angle with this model that I thought actually captured the quintessence of the model. But all in all, I love the conversion. I agree. A couple small changes, and it works as a salamander for me. I think that's A+, and I like your color choices. It's good stuff. Okie dokie. Let's see. That was yesterday. Kyle was yesterday, which is all October 1st. So last one, we'll talk about it together. Stone Monk. Let me tell you right now, Stone Monk, we're coming for you, buddy. If you made it to the end, if you're happening to watch this, we're coming for you. Sorry, he's coming to he's bringing these to a tournament.
Up here.
Yeah, he's bringing it to a tournament that he and I are going to go to next month. So I'm looking forward to seeing these on the table. So obviously this is part of his ogre army conversion where he's mixing ogres with Tyranids. We talked about the previous hero model he had converted. These are his Mournfang cavalry. Gross. I'll say that they're pretty gross because Tyranids are gross. But they're gross in the most wonderful of ways. You've done such a great job here with this conversion, buddy. I really, really do think it's well done. Just to talk about from the last model, things that I absolutely love. Let me just zoom in here real quick because I want to point this out to people because I think it is really instructive. His flesh tones smoothed out so much in how we used the purple and the brighter flesh tones since last month. This is great stuff in here. Like when we look at the way the pinks and the purples, now smooth that those transitions are up into the normal flesh tones. And again, even though this is a weird alien creature and has a lot of alien aspects to it, he still used some normal flesh tones to bring in that organic human life, which makes it all the more disturbing with the other alien parts, right? If these were just all purple, this would be less horrifying, right? Because we would see no humanity in the piece. But because we have this echo of humanity and flesh tone, we recognize it makes it all the more disturbing on a subconscious level. So that's one thing I'll say there. Excellent color choices. Now, and good execution overall. The banner's good. The other thing I really love, let's look at this freehand very tightly here on the ridge of this guy. Notice we've left the dark line of his undercolor underneath it, and then we've pushed the highlight all the way up against it. What that means is that we go light, dark, light. and it helps the freehand really stand out against the plate it's on. Like when I zoom all the way out here, this is still very clearly delineated. That line matters even at this distance. So absolutely fantastic choice. Such a tiny, tiny detail, but like I noticed it right away. And everybody else will too, even if you're not conscious of it. It's sort of a subconscious thing. So my only critique for you is I feel like with the edge highlighting, we need to smooth this down just a little. Our edge highlights are a little bit thick for my tastes. So either we need to go full edge and thin it up, or we need to smooth and create a little more of a transition. Take a little bit of this gray that you used here, turn it into a glaze, and just give me a slightly smoother edge. Or really, really edge it. Like you're clearly running your brush like this down at a flat angle as opposed to using the side of the brush here. Which, by the way, that's a great thing to do is actually edge before you shade the thing above it. Work each plate individually, edge it, and who cares if your brush tip hits the plate underneath, and then just work your shade color down, and you'll cover up the edge where your brush tip went and drew because you were using the side of your brush. So there you go.
I think I'd offer the similar critique to all those sort of bore holes or whatever those things are on the carapace. They could probably be just some pulling down, like if you do a sharp edge on top of that with some very wet paint and then draw it down from the edge a little bit, so it's going to soften it through. I think that would look good. The one on the actually, now that I look closer at it, the one on the left side seems to have a little bit more of that, and a little bit smoother of a transition, another definition in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe it's because the wash went on a little bit heavier. I don't know. But that one seems a little bit more natural. I also want to compliment him on the fact that he cared. You were pointing out the tattoo on the carapace of that light blue, but it also shows up on the ogre skin as well.
Yep.
So that's a way to tie those two otherwise separate models together in some ways. So I think that's a wonderful addition. A good tie to that. And the imagery on the banner lets you know who their friends are. So that's a good thing too.
Love that banner.
Yeah, that's really good.
All right. Great stuff, bud. I do look forward to seeing this with these guys on the table. All righty. So that brings us to the end of the month. If for some reason it was the last one, well, Kyle will be next month because he submitted on October 1st.
Okay. Well, that was a wonderful setup for September. I think we got a great spectrum of stuff. Maybe a little bit more heavily weighted towards Lizardmen than anything else.
There's a lot of Lizardmen. Shocking number of Seraphine. Yeah, absolutely. And here's what I'll say for everybody who submitted. Absolutely fantastic stuff this month, as every month. I love looking at all these. Like, I know this is always a long show, and I know that some people have to wait a long time to get their submission reviewed. But I thank you, everyone who submits, and more deeply, I'll steal Kieran's thunder here and say this. We critique this at the end of every month and offer feedback. But what we certainly encourage every member of the community to do is if you're in there and people post, give comments, talk about what you like, be positive, share what they might improve in a complimentary fashion. That interaction is so valuable because as much as we can do during the 3.5-4 hours we do this a month, the community itself, you all can do so much more. And I want to thank like Mickey and Bethany and Skeleton and a lot of other people, Andrew. There's more of you, so if I'm not mentioning you and you know you do this, I'm sorry. But people who comment, I see on almost every single post and just offering feedback. That is so deeply appreciated. And I encourage everybody else. If you don't want to do it on everyone, don't. But if you see a model you like, don't be afraid to jump in there and tell the people what you like. Sharing in this community is what pushes you forward with your hobby. And the reality is just telling somebody, hey, I really love how you did this one thing. You can make somebody's whole week with just a simple comment like that and encourage them to keep taking the next step in their hobby. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, well said. And we close out every month with just, thanking the whole group of people that contribute, not only in the ways of giving us cool stuff to look at, but in exactly what you expressed, that support others, learn from others, and share your successes and your failures, because all those make us all better against the. And this is a Vince line, the crusade against gray plastic.
That's right. The war against the gray goes ever on. And though it may never end, we will certainly win. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Stuff.
Eventually, I'm just going to be like the emperor. I'm just going to be sitting in a throne, and it's just going to be a bunch of psychers who read my mind and say that all that he's saying is that the war against the gray must go on. That's what I'm aiming for. That's it. The eternal crusade. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody who submitted and everybody who watched. Kieran, any final closing thoughts before we sign off here?
No, I think I just said it a moment ago. I'll leave it at that.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, sir. Again, thank you to Jeff for joining us as well. And of course, if you want to join us, I said it at the top of the show. I'll say it again now. Link is down below for the PmP Google Plus community. Click that link, ask to join. All that's required is that you want to take the next step on your own personal hobby journey, no matter where in your skill level you are. We'd love to have you. So for everyone else, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you next time.